There we go. Ready to go live. I was just sat at my desk exactly on time. Welcome to a Happy New Year. I don't really have a specific title, Q&A. I figured day after New Year's, some people might be off and be able to catch a live stream. I'll still do my vlog Thursday tomorrow, but hey, why not jump in and go live? I mean, I could sit down and produce a video, but I was too lazy for that today. I was like, I finished all my accounting work. I was cleaning up things around the office, or studio, however, I don't know. Do I call it my lab, my office, my studio? I think lab is where I'm going to start calling it more than anything else, because this is where things are happening. Also, got these fans. They're not just part of the picture. I'm not going to install them today. I thought about doing this at some point, because I'm going to be remodeling here in January. Maybe I will do something along the lines of remodel and set it up so I can do a live stream like on my tech bench. I mean, I technically could do it now. I don't have any way to display the comments and do Q&A, but I don't mind people asking questions as I build something. It's just a matter of, it's hard for me to build something and read the questions. So I got to figure out a workflow that may work for that. And there's also going to be a lot of rewiring of everything, because I'm building out a new lab. Maybe I should just hire Mac Telecom Networks to do my cabling for me. I'll hire Cody to come down here to Detroit and say, hey, make this pretty, because there's going to be a lot of stuff to not too much. I don't have that much to rewire. And I don't know if I want to run new wires or not. And I say run new wires because I have enough almost. I kind of want a couple more. But I'm not sure how I want to do that, because it's a real pain going from the basement through the upstairs. I have a channel to do this and then get all the way into my attic. My attic is very, very walkable, and it's also full of insulation, so it sucks doing extra there. We have a lot of wires. I have cameras all the way around my house, but I should have, as any time you're running wire, I should have run like more wire because of how much work it is. Once you run the wire, you're just like, yeah, you always think you should run more. You never run enough. It doesn't, especially when you're like, hey, I didn't really think that I was going to build the studio here like I did. And now I'm wishing I had double the wiring, but I also have some workarounds for that. I really just want to put extra cameras around the front area, and I have easy access to that where I can just put a switch on there and there's power already in those areas. So it really wouldn't be that difficult to do. I don't know. I'll figure that out and cross that bridge. But the bigger project is really figuring out how I want to redo. And I'll share the picture of what it looks like now. This is what's all going to be redone. I am completely rebuilding all of this. This is what it looks like on the other side of my studio. And I'm putting in full nice cabinets because I just have too much stuff. So yeah, that's one of the next projects. Yeah, it's the thing. You don't want to rewire your own place. And so I get it. Yeah, do a joint stream together as well. Well, what we'll do is I'll record Cody doing the work because I don't want to do the work, and then I'll let the live stream happen and people can ask Q&A. And if there's a question for Cody, I'll be like, "Hey, Cody, there's a question." Yeah, that'll be fun. All right. Yeah, I keep it looking pretty decent with mine. I don't let it get too out of hand. I mean, this is constantly where I'm testing everything. All the videos, not all, but any video where I'm using some of the smaller hardware that will fit in my lab, this is what that area looks like. It's not perfect, but it's decent. I loom a lot of stuff through here. There's a reason these are open, and I'm always changing it so I don't punch everything down and I just run it through the back like that. kind of a workaround solution for things. Also, the reason I need to really upgrade is this is what it looks like from the front. But I also have, and you can kind of see there's switches in the back too, but I'm using both sides of the rack all the way down. So it's kind of, it's actually longer than it's as well, it's not longer than it should be. It's as long as it can be and have things still slide in and out. So I've got it sliding in and out, but there's still, it's packed with equipment. And that's why I'm going with another rack so I can do it. There's also, my studio itself will be changing because there's a lot of space in my studio that I don't use. Like this is where I'm sitting right now, but this whole other area, this is when it was still partially under construction. Let me find, there we go. There's a good view of it right here. This is how big the whole studio is. I only use this half where this table is, where the ladder is usually where the camera's sitting. So I'm only using up to here. I'm building all the way around a whole wraparound desk and putting new electrical in for that. That project I'm going to take care of, and I'll have that done in January. So yeah, I'll document all this and tell people and document it not just to, say, hey, look what I'm doing, but these are ideas you may want to take to building your own lab. And, I already have the racks, or I probably would do the UniFi racks. I like the UniFi racks, but I already have them. So the rack I'm going to be using is, let me find it. So I took a picture of it. It's just one of the racks we already have at work. Where did that go? That's the rack that's coming. This rack right here, which I've covered in videos previously. It's at our Southgate office. That rack is coming to my lab. So I already know which one is coming. It's already built and it's really nice. I don't know. I haven't decided. I might bring this rack, but I haven't decided on that just yet. This rack ain't bad. It's a complete lab rack. That's why things are just hanging off of it like that. It just gives me a place to have a playground of things. But yeah. Yeah, I have some new PoE switches. I've got stuff. It's just a matter of where do I want to put the stuff to mount it. I also really don't like the idea of putting things outside. So I prefer everything to be centralized here and not have another location with switches in it. But I don't know. That's kind of a down the road problem. I don't want to have to put switches in the garage. I got a picture though. I need to do, I have some photos somewhere when I wired it, but at least this will give people an idea. I thought I had more than one picture. Anyways, I'll share this one. This is what my attic looks like. So while, yes, you can climb across the trusses, my attic has just a lot of insulation in it. It's got way more than code, so I can run wires in there. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to do that. Yep, I got a 45 drive server. I have a few 45 drive servers. Commercially, we use a lot of 45 drive servers. Where are they at? Yeah, we do a lot with these XL60s. We've sold quite a few of these to clients. So XL60s, there they are. Lots of these. This is in our Toledo office. So many drives. The Homelab show's on pause until I rethink how I'm going to do it. Jay's been busy, so he hasn't been able to participate in it, and I didn't want to do it by myself and that's all I got. Like, it's on pause until, I was going to say next year, but it is next year. So I'm working on a strategy for what I'm going to do with that. I would say yes, that pfSense is a good Homelab start for cybersecurity. I debated about doing a video dedicated. It feels a little clickbaity, but maybe I should do it. Like, pfSense for cybersecurity professionals. There's a lot you can do with pfSense to get you started in understanding the firewall and rules aspect of cybersecurity. pfSense is a cool platform for that. It's got a lot of features. You can learn your networking engineering side. You can play with Suricata, I believe, and I've never tested this, but I know it does have Zeek in the plugins. I've never tested just how well that works. You have NetFlow. If you're using a pfSense Plus, you have NetFlow, and NetFlow can be pretty enriching for your cybersecurity platform to get a better understanding of how networks work, especially if you're playing with some of the cybersecurity aspects. So I would definitely say pfSense, if you're learning the networking side of cybersecurity, is important. I think more people should learn the networking side of cybersecurity, because I've realized by talking to a lot of cybersecurity professionals, like, there's been a lot of complaints, and I get this, and I don't know the answer to the problem other than more education, but these companies that are offering, like, get into cybersecurity, blah, 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 take my course. Well, they learn some techniques. They may learn a little bit of reverse engineering, but they don't have networking knowledge. And these people applying for jobs that are upset that they can't get the high paying cybersecurity job they want, find out they are just massive gaps. They go, well, I know how to run this tool, or I can run Metasploit. But if they don't understand how routing and networking works, you're at a big deficit from those who do. It is, I think, an important aspect of cybersecurity. Kind of, I'll qualify it with depends what you're doing and exactly what fields you're going into, but I think some networking knowledge is pretty important. It's actually, thanks to the other episode, when they were on that, I might just considered buying an HL15 from an XCFS machine. Yeah, HL15 is a really solid device. And yes, they ship it right from everything comes out of Canada. They physically manufacture that in Canada, like actual manufacturing. I've got a video I've been working on. I just got to sit down and finish editing it, showing the manufacturing process that 45 Drives does. And it's all done in Nova Scotia. I just want to say thank you for your great videos, and my home tech is built on your help. That is fantastic and awesome. Happy New Year, and happy for getting a lot of your home tech working. More people should learn networking. Well, I can agree with that. Any plans on reviving the How They Got Hacked video series? I really miss those times. I do too. I wish I could get the band back together again. That's one of those, like, we started off so well, and 2020 hit, and people moved and couldn't commit to times anymore, and it fell apart. I still talk to Xavier, said Happy New Year to him. I don't talk to Mo as much. I kind of lost track of Mo, and I just don't know what he's doing these days. But Xavier, yeah, I still in contact with him. I chat with him from time to time, but unfortunately we just have not been able to line up getting it together. I do really miss doing that show. We had such a great time. I wish we could have pursued it more. It's one of the problems I've always had as a creator. For example, I was on the Sunday Morning Linux Review podcast for a long time. Really enjoyed it until Tony, who I still am friends with, just couldn't commit to certain times. And it kind of fell from there. The other people that were on there, like Phil and Jay was an addition to that as well. Once people couldn't commit to doing it, it kind of falls apart. And that's one of the challenges that you have. So me and Jay started the Homelab show because we enjoyed working with each other so much with Sunday Morning Linux Review. And not just because we're friends. I have a lot of friends, but they're not going to come on podcasts because it's not what they do. But Jay is someone who is able to come on podcasts and do this. So then we started the Homelab show, but Jay has other commitments that doesn't let him do the Homelab show as much, which is fine. So we don't do it. And then I got to figure out the next one. It's one of the reasons I produce so much content by myself. It's hard finding partners who are committed to doing it. And everyone starts out with it. There's a million podcasts and there's a million YouTube channels with 10 posts. It's the staying power that's hard, because When I say staying power, I mean years of staying power, not like a month, not 2 months. I'm looking for people to commit for years. Yeah, you can take your most x86 hardware, which is what Sophos firewalls run on, and run pfSense with it. You have 2 HL15s, double the fun. Any suggestions on short depth 1U other than Supermicro? I don't think a lot of other companies make them, or I'm just not aware of them, so I can't suggest them. They could exist in the market. I may just be less aware of them. Generally, when the short depth ones are always Supermicro. We still use a lot of Supermicro. Supermicro is one of those companies that has the variety of hardware, if you will, that fits the needs of a lot of people. More people saying I'd love to see how I get hacked back. I absolutely agree with you. Like I said, I'm 100% behind you. That's no problem. I can agree with you. The problem is the other people getting them to get time. UniFi or Alta as a better replacement for TP-Link? I would probably say UniFi's got a more complete ecosystem. Alta is trying to compete with UniFi. The Alta's got a weird way they do their self-hosted stuff. UniFi does it better. I don't know why Alta's not copying them. Alta has decided not to copy UniFi, but to compete with them. And I've told the people at Alta, if you really want to compete with UniFi, just start by copying them and then iterate on top of what they're not doing to make the crowd happy. That's the solution. You start when you're making a product with filling the gap, or at least the same gap that the current companies make. And you have to have a unique angle. And they don't seem to have any unique angle at Alta. They're just saying we're not UniFi and we charge for our controller software. I don't understand that. I don't have any problems. I've been testing Alta equipment for a while and it works fine, but it's not compelling for me to switch to move things over to it. So it's kind of, yeah. I don't know how many more Home Assistant videos I'll do. It's not my specialty. And I see that because, I mean, there's so many. I listed a few ones that I liked of Home Assistant channels, but there's so many Home Assistant channels. There's so many Home Assistant videos. So I think I'd have to take a request and figure out how it relates specifically to me. Like maybe I'll do a UniFi plus Home Assistant video. That makes sense. I've done the base why you should use Home Assistant. I could do an extended video of using things that are more common on my channel, but doing a dedicated Home Assistant channel or just doing a lot of it, the YouTube algorithm punishes you essentially for deviating for what the expected content of your channel is. It's a really weird algorithm problem, I guess you could say. Quotom, are you okay with them? Amazon, eBay brand? They seem okay. I'm not going to call them great. I've seen that frequently they use the cheapest memory and the cheapest drives in them. So if you buy it with their memory, their drives to get the bundled discount, it's not really a bundled discount. It's really cheap memory and cheap drives that may or may not last as long. It seems to be a gamble. We've bought enough of them to see a percentage of them fail compared to the B-Links don't seem to fail. Minis forums don't seem to fail as often. But you look at something like B-Links, or I think some of the Minis forums, I don't have a bunch of them to test, but from what I've heard from other people in Minis forums is they're using brand name hard drives and brand name memory. I know the B-Links, all the B-Links I've gotten, I believe have been either Crucial or Kingston memory. Much better. So it really comes down to, it doesn't seem to be the hardware failures aren't horrible on them. They're usually memory or hard drive. So with 45 drive servers, do you load whatever software you want, TrueNAS or Windows Server? Well, I would never want to load a Windows Server, but you could. I wouldn't do it. I've got Debian on mine right now. I swap operating systems. I don't know. I'm not going to use the word frequently, but often enough. The 45 drives has been like this weird child of a server that gets passed around between my lab and back to the office, sometimes to move data faster. and it keeps getting repurposed as something else for my testing. But yeah, you can load whatever you want on it. With how many years in business, do you have any dumb end of the year write-off purchases? Well, I don't need them this year. My YouTube channel, my company Lawrence Systems owns the YouTube channel. CNWR owns the IT services. CNWR had a great year, and Lawrence Systems lost a bunch of money. So I don't need any more write-offs. I lost a lot of money this year. I finished my financials, so I don't need any, and I never really do any dumb write-offs. I just balance needs more than anything else. I don't try to say, oh no, there's extra cash. What am I going to do with it? I generally try to roll money into the business when I can. I'll save a little bit to keep some cash flow because I don't need to zero it out at the end of the year because it's an S corp. But I don't run around just looking for dumb things to buy. I usually can figure out something to buy because there's always some thing I need. I debated a lot. I really like the Framework laptop, but I lost so much money this year. I didn't want to buy a Framework laptop and increase my losses. Anything I'd buy I actually slowed down and said, what do I really need, and not spend any money because my losses were going to be so big. Can MikroTik be a replacement for that? Yeah. I would say MikroTik could be, but you got a different learning curve on MikroTik, but it's not bad. I mean, there's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, leave some information in the comments. But I don't think MikroTik has any nice single pane of glass management platform like UniFi does, or Omada, if you're looking at the Omada. So you could use MikroTik. I mean, the switches work. They're very functional. There's not I can't tell you why not to use them other than there's some extra complexity that comes with MikroTik. But yeah, they've got their documentation. My understanding from many of you has been the documentation has gotten better. Maybe I should revisit some of the MikroTik stuff. They don't make terrible hardware. And once you learn it, once you've gotten over the learning curve and go, I get it and how it works, fantastic. Awesome. And I'm actually impressed with one of the old MikroTik switches I have that I reviewed like 5 years ago. Still gets updates. It works great. It's a nice little 10 gig switch. I got no complaints about it. Matter of fact, I might be using it for my storage network because when I build the new one, just to go, I'm going to use a MikroTik for storage and dedicate it to the storage network as a separate switch because I don't need to run my storage network through the UniFi. And I've talked about using separate switches, and I like the visibility I get with the UniFi dashboard, but the storage switch, as long as it's switching, great. And I don't need any routing functions. Do you see yourself switching from pfSense to UniFi for firewall departments for business? Yeah, version 9 offers a lot of compelling features. I think UniFi's really landed on a solid product. Version 9 is at release candidate right now. They'll have it out soon. I'm going to probably say within the next week or two, just a guess, just because I know it's been a release candidate for a little while. Yeah, I think they made a compelling offer. They've gotten substantially better. The stock has gotten better. So yeah, when will that happen? Well, that comes down more to life cycle refreshes. We have a lot of clients that aren't at life cycle, but when they are, you put in consideration. I don't change because I like something. I change because, well, it's time to change. Something has reached end of life, and we need to look at what the right solution is to drop in. And we'll be weighing the options. And definitely UniFi has now landed on the options. I think they finally made their firewalls look a lot more attractive with the way the rules work and a few of the features. And version 9 is where a lot of that comes from. That new rule interface is so much nicer. Have I looked at the Proxmox data center stuff? I can't decide how to do this. People have been clamoring for a Proxmox versus XCP-NG video. I might just make a comparison with no opinions in it. You know what I mean? Like, I use XCP-NG. That's the one I know the best. I'm not going to offer any, like, you should use this. It's going to be, I use this. I explained why many times because of the commercial support, et cetera, I get with XCP-NG. But do I just do a comparison? Because people seem confused about some of the features, but then again, so am I. I I got to sit down and just read the docs, I guess, but I don't use Proxmox. So I hate just reading through docs because reading through a document doesn't give me the same understanding of reading a document and using the software. But I think Proxmox Data Center is cool. I think it's a missing piece where I've talked about the features that XO has, and the XO system is able to do things that Proxmox Data Center is trying to do. Fantastic. They're now catching up because people say, well, people ask me if it surpasses XO. I'm like, no, it's creating feature parity, which I think is good. I like competition in an ecosystem. It doesn't mean I'll switch to it because I have a few people that have been running Proxmox that did reach out to me finally. And one of them has, I had a few people tell me they have some really interesting notes, and the source is what matters. This is someone who really knows Linux well and are telling me the problems they're having with Proxmox. So I'm evaluating that and going, okay, these are problems that are interesting to me. They're not insurmountable. They're just extra maintenance things that had to be done in Proxmox that we don't see in XCP-NG. And that's what I'm trying to find out, because the Homelab tinkerers really like Proxmox. The business people really like XCP-NG, but they're both open source and free. I feel like XCP-NG serviced the business market first and really well. Proxmox has the Homelab market, but XCP-NG is getting more features that make Homelab people happy, and Proxmox is getting more features that make business people happy. So that's a good ecosystem, but at some point they cross as they kind of, reach feature parity, which is great. It's good for everyone because they're both open source. Well, that's awesome. I'm super happy it helped you better understand the dashboards. The algorithm, yeah, this is going to drive me. It'll drive me crazy to try to get to. If I do too many videos on something, I don't know. It's one of the reasons. Here's an example with the algorithm. I had to split off the business videos. And, since I sold the company, the IT side, and I bought into another company, I'm less involved in day-to-day business stuff. That's one of the reasons I just don't. I've got enough videos on my other business channel because we talk about things that it ain't like a new firewall that came out. It doesn't need an update because people say, well, how are you doing this? I can reference an old business video going the same way I did it 3 years ago. It hasn't changed. But when I used to post business videos on my channel, I would lose subscribers. I'm like, wow, 20 people unsubscribed from my channel because I talked about, clients and things like that. Kind of funny. I either decided the channel has to go more business and focus on those people, or less business, which is what I chose because I'm more happy in the world of tech with all of you. But either way, I'm glad it really helped you solve the dashboards. There's so much to Home Assistant. I'm so tedious. Like I didn't cover like backing it up. I back up my Home Assistant anytime I make changes to it, and I make sure it's backed up well because you get so involved in all these changes. I'm terrified of losing it and having to do it again. I hate repeating work. And Home Assistant's one of those, there's a lot of effort. It's not like this happened. Like I sat down and just built my Home Assistant. It's one of those iterative things that over time you build it up more and more and more until it's a big complicated thing. TrueNAS pool 1 backs up to pool 2. I deleted all snapshots in the system. Now pool 1 won't sync and back up to pool 2. I have to delete all the data. Start my backups over. Any options to sync? No, I think once you've messed with the snapshots, it's out of sync. And it doesn't know because you don't have the proper chain anymore to get the data from pool A to pool B. Once you've messed with the chain, I gotta play around with that because there's got to be a way to resync some of it. But generally speaking, ZFS does not like the chain being broken. I think there's parameters by which you can sync certain, like resync something. But once the blocks are away, I have a client who has spent a lot of money with me because I always constantly tell them, especially on their destination backups. And we're talking about a company with just terabytes and terabytes of data. They're huge. If I can only get that sysadmin not to mess with the stupid snapshots, he goes and plays with them. And he always says, well, I was just trying to figure something out. That's usually how it starts. Can you help me refix all of this? And I'm like, yeah, I'll try. But it ends up we have to resync it. And it takes like a week or two to resync everything between their data centers. They paid us for that same project like 4 times to get it all fixed again, which is fine by me. I mean, I don't feel like I'm taking advantage of them. they know what they always apologize. They just keep doing it. Is it possible to install a new VM for Zen Orchestra to self-build in XO Lite or via the command line? You technically can build stuff via the command line. You can also download XOA and you get a free 30-day activation. Use that to build your other XO. It's not hard to do. 45 drives come with Houston OS, but you can reinstall others. Yes, Houston OS is definitely really cool. Just set up a Proxmox cluster. Was surprised by how many things need to be done in CLI compared to XCP-NG. Right. That's a lot of it. So yes. I've never heard of Mushroom Networks, so no thoughts on them. Do you think pfSense will be switching over to Linux next few years? Is Tensor, it's a new platform? I don't know. I don't really know where they're going with that. I have no idea where the ban will be, if the ban will happen, or if we'll have the usual problems we have with Congress and Washington in general here, where they talk a lot about doing stuff, then they argue and don't do anything but give themselves raises. That's the summary of what happens overly frequently. Mikrotik, costing you time, saving you money, makes you learn a lot on the IP tables level. Yeah. I've heard about dude management, but I don't know how good it is. Dude management's a tool for there. So you have to hack up Ansible SNMP to make your own single pane of glass. They have something called Dude for centralized logging and some remote management, but it's nothing like UniFi. Okay. Hi, Happy New Year. I want to ask if you have any plans Ubiquiti to provide a UniFi talk app, cell phone in the future. If yes, I don't know of any plans on it. I don't really touch much of their SIP stuff. I really don't like phones. Like, I just don't like using the phone. I know a lot of people do. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about phone stuff. Let's see. Does XCP-NG let you use data sets per VM? No, not per VM. You can create a storage pool based on ZFS, but it's a storage repository. I mean, you could probably use Syncoid and Sanoid on it. I've never tried, so there's a possibility there. Yeah, it's not a race to the bottom, it's a race to the top, and that's the best thing. The XCP-NG and Proxmox, we're seeing both systems get better, which is a win for all of us. Oh, excuse me, hiccuped. You mentioned a while ago that BSD is slowing down a bit with developers. It affects, which affects offense, just like TrueNAS pivoted to BSD and Linux. Do you think I don't know where pfSense will land. It's hard to say. And you got to figure some of the older people that are involved in it are still the same people involved. What happens if they retire? Does the vision of pfSense carry on? Or do they change altogether to be a commercial entity? I don't know. And it's going to be interesting because I've been wanting to figure out, and maybe I should reach out to the people at the Serial Port. That's been on my list. I really like that channel. They cover a lot of internet history, but I thought about talking with them and maybe even throwing money at them if that helps. I don't know. I would love a good video, or maybe I should sit down and really work on producing one where we cover the history of open source firewalls. It's exciting to see virtualization with XCP-NG and Proxmox. We're excited. Awesome. There was a time we were excited about firewalls. They're all gone. The open source firewall world is kind of left with pfSense, and someone's going to go, but Tom, OpenSense. And yeah, OpenSense is falling downstream from pfSense. If pfSense stops contributing to BSD, that is the nails in the coffin of BSD based operating systems right now, because we're watching it slowly die. But once there's a lack of contributions coming from Netgate, love it or hate it, they're one of the big contributors, or one of the big, not the biggest, but one of the bigger contributors. And more specifically, not just what code they commit, or in a percentage, it's more about what code they're committing, and the what code is related to firewalls. if Netgate stopped contributing to BSD, I don't see BSD firewalls surviving. And if you head over to the Linux world, I got nothing. IP Fire, OpenWRT is pretty cool. I'm going to play with it because it's like just so I can mention an open source firewall option. I think OpenWRT is getting better, but that's it. Think about it. We have one open source Linux firewall that's popular. One. That's not much. I quit using Zabbix because I just don't need it. Zabbix is good. I don't have nothing against it. It's a lack of need for monitoring the infrastructure. So I would still say if you want to monitor infrastructure, Zabbix is probably one of the best. I don't monitor my infrastructure with anything more than a ping and some net data. That's it. I mean, Zabbix got to be where I'm holding up infrastructure that's more complex than I need for my use case. Do I have experience virtualizing TrueNAS? You know what I have the most experience in? People who break the who virtualize it and lose all their data, and me trying to help recover them because they've reached out to me for help. That's what I've got the most experience in. I've even had people get weird corruption from it. So yeah, it works. And I know there's a good percentage of people that virtualize it with success and they have it working great until it's not. A hypervisor update caused a problem a while back where it ended up corrupting all the data for someone. That's less great. You're adding complexity to your storage server. So I just don't really push people and recommend to do it. You also have the most trouble doing it because you're going to just run into quirky issues when you set it up. But if you really want to try it, it's a good learning adventure. XCP are XCP-NG full backups independent from the deltas? Actually, yes, they are. If you have, and we'll pull this up. So why not? Let's look. I love doing things live to talk together, but if we go to backups, restore, I'll pull up UniFi. There are the full backups. So we'll go ahead and check these. You can see the fulls and you can see the incrementals. So they're all baked in together in one interface, but they're separate backups. That's why it gives you a count of how many delta and how many are full. So they are different, but technically every delta has to start with a full because that's how the chain works. So if I were to do a new delta of a backup, you would end up with a, what do you call that? You'd end up with the first one. Oh, it'll say full because it has to start the chain. So XCP-NG still does HA better. I think it's easier to set up on XCP-NG, but that's my opinion. I've not spent enough time with high availability on Proxmox to truly give you opinion. Yeah, Vios's licensing fees for the commercial version is like $10,000+ a year. So I'm going to say probably not the most popular. Also command line driven, not going to push its way into the Homelab with a ton of popularity. I miss IP Cop. There we go. There's someone who recognizes the older ones. Someone told me this, and I'm not a Juniper user, but I was told by someone that I trust that Juniper's been moving away and their new stuff is all Linux based, not that. So someone oh, here he goes. There's someone, yeah. JunoS, Evo, Linux, but all Juniper's routers run on BSD. Okay. Someone said Juniper's moving away from it. I just don't use Juniper enough to say, but I mean, Juniper's not open source either. Juniper's a commercial expensive product. So, but I bet Juniper's probably got the same concerns. But then again, Juniper's a company that is big enough that they probably have enough money to pay some high-end developers, and they just won't commit as much upstream. I briefly used MonoWall forever ago. Oh, pretty much every commercial firewall now, Juniper's, like someone mentioned, is still running on BSD, but the majority of commercial firewalls now run on Linux. They just aren't open source. all, like, for example, UniFi is a Linux firewall. It's just not open source. I've already done the upgrade from core to scale. I don't know. People ask this, but I don't know why I would do a new video on it, because the process hasn't changed. And there's not anything new for me to really add other than do the same thing I did in a video. The video may be 2 years old, but the process isn't any different. You can do an in-place migration. Yeah, make sure you pass through the HBA if you virtualize TrueNAS. Even when you virtualize the HBA, sometimes things go wrong. I don't care for the Firewall products. I think it's weird. Correct me if I'm wrong. With the last time I looked at Firewall, it all routes through your phone app, and everything wants to talk to the Firewall servers. It has the ability to talk locally, but you're also dealing with, I don't know. I just, something about the brand seems weird to me. Like, I talked about it before, where there's so much of a cloud integration where it gets its updates and everything, but technically, to some extent, so does UniFi. What I'm curious about, and just don't know enough about with the Firewall stuff, is how does it actually work if it doesn't have it, if their servers go down, if it loses a connection there? I don't know. But I mean, if people want to use it, I don't have a real compelling reason other than the weird phone app and it doesn't seem to have a lot of advanced features. So advanced is kind of a, if you like the parental control features, that's almost the constant question that people ask. What's a good firewall parental controls? Oh, use the Firewall. I mean, they seem to have that. So if that's your concern, awesome. But yeah. Smooth wall. There we go. I used to love smooth wall and some of those. Matter of fact, let's here, I'll expose my public IP from 2002. I believe this at the time would have been running either IPCOP or smooth wall. Yeah. I'm a long time. This is from 2002. So yes. I'm considering using iSCSI network for boot and database rates. Will you say using thin provisioning sparse files is a better option than thick provisioning? What would be better for snapshots? Usually thin is going to be better for snapshots. Thick is going to be, thick can be more performant. See if it works with thin, because you can always just reforce the size on it to bigger. Start with thin, see if the performance makes you happy. Then switch to thick and see if the performance makes you happier. When you're running a thin provision system, there's good and bad. The good, you saved on space. The bad, you don't realize until it's too late that you've over provisioned your space. Let's say I have 1 terabyte of free and I make a bunch of 1 or less than 1 terabyte, like 500 terabyte. I make 10 of them, and I can make 10 thin provision half terabyte ZVols, but if they all expand simultaneously before I can move them somewhere else, I'm in trouble. So sometimes thick provisioning is a way to prevent trouble. And that's kind of the rules for it. Thoughts on TrueNAS remote backups? I find the replication being reliant on snapshots can be finicky. If anything happens to the chain, probably onto my 3rd time resilvering over 100 meg link. I mean, backup with rsync, backup to one of their cloud providers. I've dragged my feet on it, and now that it's integrated, maybe I'll take a look at Storage A. And I keep calling it Storage A. They want to call it Storage or something like that. My problem I've had with Storage A, I was so excited when TrueNAS announced a partnership for them. I was like, hey, cool. But as soon as I seen crypto attached to it, drove me nuts. I'm like, why? This doesn't need crypto. We don't need more crypto. Anytime I know there's crypto, I feel like there's a scam somewhere. And if it's not a scam immediately, it feels like there's a scam coming. So I'm always like, anything that touches it, I avoid with the crypto stuff. But nonetheless, Storage A, I might check out the pricing on it and see if it's a good way to back up. I am lucky. and this is where I'm lucky, but it also creates a problem for me to do the review. I have to really sit down and want to use it because I don't need to store anything in the cloud because I have multiple buildings that I can store things in and data centers. So because I have places to store things, I don't like wasting my money on cloud bill, but I probably will, out of testing and giving people some honest opinion, spend some money I don't need to spend because I'm not going to ask for any sponsorship. I want to honestly review it with no bias in my head. Well, maybe I'll find a sponsor to pay for it. That's different, but the sponsor wouldn't be Storage A. I may try this out and see if it's a good one to do. I've had people tell me good things about it, and it's been around long enough that I'm willing to overlook the fact that they're doing something with crypto that I will just pretend they're not doing, and I won't cover that part of it because that annoys me. It's sad to see 40 Palo Alto Checkpoint are all Linux. There isn't really any firewall running BSD except for Juniper left. Yeah. The problem that people who use OpenStack have always explained to me, and maybe I should just do this when I'm doing some hypervisor comparison because this comes up. OpenStack's a pretty powerful and robust system. Anytime I've talked to people using it, they seem to have a team using it because of its complexity. The problem I would say with OpenStack is we give you every feature at an amazing level of complexity. So can you do a lot with it? Yes. Does it take a lot of knowledge to do with it? Yes. That's what I've heard. Anytime I looked at it, it just looks a lot more complicated than some of the other solutions. So I don't have if you want to use it and you go, Tom, you're just not smart. And I'll go, you're probably right. And I'll agree with people because there's people who tell me all the time that I'm wrong for not wanting to run my firewalls from the command line only. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to do that. I did it years and years ago, and I've forgotten most of that. When I'm doing IP table stuff now, I have to look it up. I'm going to fully admit that. Maybe I just lost some geek cred with people that I don't remember all the IP table commands and masquerade commands anymore to set up NAT by hand in a firewall, but that's where I'm at in life. So maybe I'm looking at OpenStack and thinking it's complicated, and other people are better at it than me going, Tom, you're way wrong on this, and it's easy for me. I don't know. Can you talk about IDS IPS for UniFi? Have you seen any stop? So let's talk about big picture here. I talked about how ineffective IDS and IPS is in several other videos, and I still feel that way. I got nothing. I can't say even on Meraki, even on Cisco, some of the other brands we use, I can't tell you a time where I'm going, man, if only we had the IDS turned on, or, oh man, I'm glad we had the IDS. That really saved our bacon there. Matter of fact, if you run through all the different companies getting hacked, especially the large ones, the medical networks, do you know what was used at those medical networks? Almost every one of them is using one of the big brand name vendors, because we're talking about the size of these companies. They don't use pfSense. They're not using UniFi. So I don't find IDS IPS to be effective in 2020. Well, we'll say 2025 now. I almost said 2024. Here's the thing. Will we buy it for some people? Absolutely. Insurance says you have to be doing something. So for some businesses, yeah, I'm sure they'll buy it. That's a compliance thing. It's a compliance and about this much of security. Happy New Year. Built a NAS with focus on efficiency. Awesome. I'm not sure how much you can make it use less power. People seem upset with me. But when I made the video about wattage, I showed that spinning the drives down, the drives idle at such a low wattage, and the inefficiency of power supplies is what people brought up. I was measuring at the power supply, and people are like, you should measure at the drive. I'm like, no, I should measure at the power supply, because your build, what comes out of your wall, you're not build at how much wattage a drive uses. You're build at what the conversion of the wall plug is at the power supply and everything else. So all those losses are occurring after your power meter. I haven't really played with fiber iSCSI over fiber channel. It's older. I don't see as much of it anymore. I mean, I usually see older systems that are really old, so they're not a good comparison for performance. And yeah, good news. They lasted till old age. We're quoting replacements for them, but we're not quoting replacements with fiber channel. So only the storage A operators are paid in crypto. Yeah, that's just weird to me, but oh. What are my thoughts on Huntress with Defender? I don't know. Right now, as of today, still we're using Huntress plus S1. But if you said you can only pick one, I'd pick Huntress. So if you only have one to choose, I would do that. I have thoughts on Atom Networks. I think the idea and the concept is good for security 8 or 9 years ago. I had a good conversation with them, but when I started really looking at it, my problem is with the way the Atoms network system is. I get where they're going with it's really advanced DNS filtering. If you haven't heard of Atoms Networks, they have their do not talk to strangers. I think it's cool, but like, for example, she's been on the channel before. Amanda Berlin is a threat engineer who deals with regular threats all the time. And the modern threats, like if you really start reading how modern attacks happen, Atom Networks will stop old school attacks, but has nothing for modern attacks. Modern attacks are using Cloudflare tunnels. Modern attacks always have Let's Encrypt. Modern attacks have fully qualified domain names with proper URLs. These are the things that are the majority of the attacks that they're seeing over at like Plumera. So when you're talking to threat engineers who are working in the field, they're going, oh yeah, that would absolutely solve all my problems 8 years ago. That's not what would solve my problems today. So it's because things like do not talk to strangers, better DNS filtering, etc., have become kind of table stakes for a lot of the commercial firewalls. The threat actors just had to up their game. And that just is where the cat and mouse game is. So it's still, you're protecting yourself against old threats, which still exist, by the way. So there's definitely some threat actor that doesn't have a Cloudflare tunnel set up, and you will be able to protect yourself against that type of attack. I don't know how many of those attacks there are, but that's how I feel about it. And the same thing with IDS, IPS. Having block lists absolutely can do things like stop you from getting attacked from an old school attack. But you have to really think about what the new ones are. Oh, I know this is when I say look it up, I should probably say typed it into ChatGPT to get an answer. I did not actually look up the IP table rules when I look them up anymore. In a past life, I was on the OpenStack team at Red Hat, and the biggest issue was salespeople selling it as a 1-for-1 replacement for vCenter. It's not that. Compliance, the reasons red tape library still exists. Yep. I got to find some of the documents that I think would really support this. I've talked to some security people, and I got to get them to send me the proof. And I have a lot of back channels in security, and I've always thought TP-Link security was garbage. And from talking to a few security people, they told me it's not just garbage. Security researchers who do regular submissions have told me TP-Link just doesn't care. Like, they submit bugs to them. You have to shame. This is what I was told by a couple of people. If you don't shame TP-Link into fixing it, they ain't fixing it. And this is part of the problem with them. And I don't look at the ban as a solution at all, because we still have Fortinet, a US-based company who also has absolutely trash code. We have Microsoft, a $1 trillion US company that misplaced security logs for their enterprise customers and took them like 2 weeks to fix it. There's all these companies doing absolutely terrible security. I think there should be better punishments? I don't know. I'm not going to rant on that topic too much, but there's really a lot of security problems by these large entities. So banning TP-Link, I mean, sure, why not? But why stop there? why don't we discipline these other companies for also behaving poorly? Toshiba Cloud Scale serves drives in a NAS. Couldn't hurt the drives. Run on a NAS. Turn them on 1 times a day. People used to say it's unhealthy for the drives, but it's still the use case. The jury is still out. That is still a divided topic. I almost need, and maybe I'll set this up. One day I'll grab a pair of drives, but the problem is I need a whole array of drives to do this. Because a 1-to-1 scale is enough. I need 10 drives of a certain type, like something common mainstream. The problem is that's expensive because I need 10 drives that I test leaving on and 10 drives that I power cycle every single day. Which one of these will fail first? That's the question. I don't know. I need enough drives to test it. It's a long-term test. The test would take at least, I'm going to guess, a year to have some results. And people want to know if drives last 5 years. So how long do I run the test for? And then I'm only testing a generation of drive that now is a couple years old before I have the results. So I just don't have solid information on that. How are you finding CrowdStrike for SMB use? We don't see CrowdStrike in the SMB. The small businesses of America were safe from the CrowdStrike outage. It's not zero, but it's very little in that regard. We already have those test results. CWD green. Do you use S1 Vigilance as well as Control? Does Huntress have the ability to monitor S1? No, Huntress has no integrations to S1, and we have I may be mixing it. We have whatever the full one is. I believe it's called Vigilance. We have the full version of S1. Have you heard of the VW data leak? They had their car telemetry database unprotected, and you could just pull GPS data. There is nothing about that whole sentence that surprises me. We have our customers scheduled on reboots before scheduled updates. Let the drive won't survive reboot, die before the upgrade starts. Yeah, not a bad idea. I mean, yeah, we still use Huntress and S1, so sure, 2 MDRs. The difference between the enterprise, MS Cisco Fort, and the cheapware companies like TP-Link is the enterprise provides support and fixes once it leaves the factory. Yeah, I mean, my understanding from people I've talked to about TP-Link is, like I said, they just ignore the issues until someone forces their hand not to. Yeah, they could maybe you could do some tweaking on this. I don't know. I know if I am traveling and I look at my cameras and I'm in an area that even though and here's the problem, 5G, when I was in Deadwood, South Dakota for an event, my phone said 5G sometimes. My phone did not have 5G experience. So part of the problem you have is 5G or 4G is a link speed, not your speed. I linked at this speed, but the transport layer was not able to give me that full speed, which causes its own drama. But yeah, there can be some lag in viewing the Synology cameras. I've definitely run into that. On the other hand, it's very popular with companies now to ship and fix later, give you the advertised features months later, even though they sold it. Yeah, there's definitely, I always tell people, buy with the features that are shipping when you buy it, not the features that you're being promised in the future. That's just good. And it applies to more than just tech. So Get my water. Oh. Any updated thoughts on CrowdSec? Nope, I don't use CrowdSec, so I have no opinion on it. It's a popular service. Take that for what it's worth. They're probably a better service after the disaster they created. Like, that's how I feel about CrowdSec. They're probably better now than they used to be. You know, a couple things, and one of them was this. I'm a home assistant, and I seen someone ask this, and I don't know if I should have included this or not. I see a lot of people talking about, I think Homer is one of them. Basically, it's a dashboard where you can put links to things, where you can say, hey, here's all my servers. And that's fine, but why run it as a separate service? Like, to me, everything doesn't need to be a separate service. So one of the things I wanted to point out in Home Assistant here, and maybe this will be helpful to you, I only have a few things that I look at all the time, like MB, Chasm, a couple different versions of XO. If you add a markdown card, and that's all this is, you can just put links in markdown with some icons next to them to be able to get to all these different things. Matter of fact, I mean, I do need to fix this. I've been using the Bly KVM on and off because it works, which I've reviewed this before, but the Jet KVM is so much better in every conceivable way. So that is something I'll probably switch on there. But yeah, it's not that big of a deal to use this also as your homepage. I try to make everything in Home Assistant everything that I want is all in Home Assistant. That's one of the things I wanted to do a video about Home Assistant, was to talk about just how good you can make it in terms of being the central place for your home lab and all the things that you want to center around. It just works really well for that. But I maybe there are some videos like, is this really a video talking about why I have these servers linked here? Now, a UniFi integration might be interesting. Talking about a reverse proxy might be interesting for people wanting to know how to host it. Playing around, like when I do, because I will do this eventually, when I do some UPS integration, that would be an interesting topic for people going, hey, how do you integrate a UPS into here for shutdown? Because one of the cool integrations you have is, well, actually, I will show you. This is kind of weird. Maybe it's me not understanding something in Home Assistant, but you can set up a NUT server in here and put the host in. But I'm wondering if you can put more than one, because I also have one set up right here. So it's talking to this, but I have some troubles where it has these, but it doesn't seem to pull the stats on there. Like, it won't let me enable some of the sensors. Or can I enable this one? Is that what I'm doing wrong? Okay, I can enable that entity. Where's the... One of these I couldn't. There's a charge state. Voltage. Okay, yeah, it just doesn't have beeper status. Let's try to update that. Will be added in 30 seconds. Cool. But yeah, that might be a good video, is talking about how to do UPS integration with it. What's the best way to attach storage to a VM that has a Docker host? I run a database. For me, I talked about this in my Graylog video for Docker. I have an NFS storage that is on my TrueNAS, and I tell the Docker host to mount the storage. That's it. That just works. And that's been my simple go-to solution. So Graylog is right here. And this Graylog host, now technically, I'm doing it and following my own best practices. You notice how there's 2 networks on my gray log? And I love repeating this. Quit routing your storage. And I don't route my storage. Here's the storage mount. The .20 network on my network is the storage network. So 192.168.20, it's set to .7, and that's it. There's a storage mount. So if you log into this particular server, which I could probably do that. Now, there's different answers to this question, but let's answer it the way I'm doing it. Mounted at Mount Gray Logs. Is that? Yeah, that's pretty readable. There you go. I just like when it's all on one line. Then we can do this, make it there, it's still on one line. But yeah, I have the Docker host itself mounting it. You can do this in Docker as well, but I found it to be more problematic. So I have the operating system on boot go ahead and mount the NFS, and that's where all the databases are, or all the data storage, which is like a database of all the Docker stuff or all the gray log things. Now, this is something that is a pretty good calculation. The wattage it takes to spin back up a drive has a high cost to it. So it's not just the wear and tear, it is actually the wattage it takes to spin up and down a drive. Yes. It's a NUT client and not a NUT server. It's asking you to enter the credentials for another NUT server. Yeah, I thought you can, someone had told me in a forum that you can install NUT server on there and have it talking to it, but I don't know if that's really true or not in there. I hope so. I don't have any dongle advice. I showed in my video the dongle I'm using. Take that for what it's worth. I've not researched other ones. I know other people have, but I have not. NFS volume mounts via Docker Compose. Don't manage it in a host level. Let Docker do it. I'm probably just doing something wrong. I found that to be buggy. I would probably say that's the best way to do it. I found that to be the most buggy way to get it working. I don't remember why I was having so many problems with it. It kept not mounting consistently. So out of aggravation and wanting to solve the problem and get work done, I mounted it from the OS, and that was a couple years ago, and it's always worked. Granted, I haven't retried this in 2 years. Sky Connect. I know that's a new one that came out, is the Sky Connect dongle. That one, because it's from the people behind Home Assistant, I think is probably good. Do you have to make a video on OS 9? Yes. What's your opinion on the Matter smart home connectivity? It's novel. I'm not using it, so I don't have an opinion on it. Like, there's a lot of other people that have been talking about it. It looks cool. I like good standards, and I hope people follow it. We'll just have to wait for devices to start really using it. When devices start coming out, that's when it'll matter. How many VM resources do I allocate to Graylog? Well, what I allocate and what you allocate may not be the same thing, because your Graylog may not be as intensive as my Graylog. Mine's actually being wound down because we moved all the servers, and I haven't built a new Graylog at the for the other location. And this is this just barely has any data going to it. So now it's over provisioned with 16 gigs of RAM and 16 cores, because it's mostly sitting here at 1%. Is it more secure? I don't know that it's more secure. It's coming from the same host, so I don't know about security. NFS, I'm just using IP restrictions for security. What do you think the future of Ubiquiti Smart Sensor is? The new Wi-Fi 7 access points do not support Bluetooth. Yeah, I don't know. I've never got much into their smart sensor stuff, so I don't have a lot of opinion on it. You can run a NET server on Home Assistant. However, I run a separate NET server and a Pi, and then all my devices connect to it for its UPS status. Yeah, and I thought about that too. I have some older Pis, and I don't think NUT is a particularly intensive system to run. One of the reasons, and I think an advantage of running a NUT server on a separate Pi, was because UPSs scare me in terms of things that go wrong. And if the UPS is plugged in via USB and the UPS has some type of catastrophic failure, what else will it take out with it? Probably anything plugged in USB. Maybe. It's a stretch. This is not a common failure mode, but I have Raspberry Pi 3s I don't know what to do with. And I think NUT would probably run perfectly fine on a Raspberry Pi 3. And I have a Raspberry Pi 3. Actually, I have some Raspberry Pi 4s. Yeah, feel free. If you want to email me the GitHub link, that'd be interesting. Homelab at lawrencesystems.com. I've left that email address up here for people that want to send me stuff. Were some losses expected or did anything particular happen? I don't understand. I'm missing the question on that one. No, I didn't even cover ESP Home, just to keep it brief. I also don't use ESP Home. I think ESP Home is cool. I have friends that have really built some neat things with it, but I don't use it. So I know there's an interest in it. I just don't cover it because I'm not using at this moment any of the stuff. What is the best way to forward traffic in a pfSense to an Exanode? I don't know if you can. I've not set that up, and I'm not sure it's possible. Do you have a separate network for XCP-NG's VM migrations? Generally, I just do that across the management network. I don't usually build a separate network for it, but you can. Absolutely, you can build a dedicated interface for that. The commercial install of XCP-NG is start with bonded interfaces and go from there. So if you have a full, like what we just did in a data center for a client, here's a series, I think 4 or 6, I think it was 6 XCP-NG servers, 2 switches with MC lag set up, bonds between each of the 6 XCP-NG servers going to each of the switches. So now we have the resiliency to survive a switch failure and the resiliency for a single cable failure or card failure on any of the XCP-NGs, a full HA setup, a full storage setup. Then from there, once the bond is set up, you just create VLANs as necessary. And because you're bonding 10 gig links, you can aggregate up to 20 gigs that way. But 10 gigs is more than enough to do most VM transfers. Why is your NAS IP not static? It needs to be static. I use Docker Compose. Why is your NAS IP not? My NAS IP is static, so I'm not understanding the question. Or maybe you're asking it for someone else. How would an MSP manage dark sites at scale? We have some limited connections. Currently, the systems are only patched once a year to avoid breakage. That's a specialty question. Sometimes you have to do that. There are companies with air gap systems that if you're working with them, you'll just have to make lots of exceptions. There's not a playbook for handling it. There's companies that go, this is air gapped. You can't have access to it. Okay. That's, if you want to deal with that client, then okay. Okay, I was making sure I didn't miss the question. I'm fine if you're answering other people's questions. I just didn't see the question exactly you're answering. I recently upgraded a Netgate pfSense to 2411, lost access to the firewall via WireGuard client. Have you seen WireGuard service not starting in 2411 was installed? Not at all. I've had no issues at all with 2411. And all my stuff is site-to-site WireGuard for my labs. I I have, in even the recent videos I did, I first tested them with, well, I tested all of them on 2411, but I had no problem getting my system, which is at 2411, to talk with WireGuard over things and all kinds of fun, unique routing things I've tried. Never had a problem. So don't know what quit without logs, and that's where forum posts. Head over to the Netgate forum, show some posts together, and hopefully sort that out. Have I seen Pyron Man 5? No, actually, let me grab something. I have the what is this called? Argon case. I think it's Argon. Oh, and if you're wondering what's on it, this is stupid. Tom's bad with super glue. I glued my fingers to this case on complete accident. That happened. See, this is why I should build things live, because you'd be watching Tom play with super glue, glue two fingers together, get aggravated, grab the case to move it, and then glue his fingers to the case, and then get glue all over the case. So this was a calamity of, but it works now. Thanks, Jeff Geerling. Jeff Geerling, I know Jeff personally, and I could have reached out to him, but Jeff is kind enough to do really good write-ups on his GitHub that helped me solve the problems. Now, the super glue problem is a completely separate problem and a stupid one. I lost, and I can't find it anywhere. One of these fell out. These are the magnets that are in there. One is missing and one is there. The exact same thing happened inside. I put the case together and there was stuff rattling in it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. And so I look, and one of the magnets was in here. So I re-glued the magnet in here. Cue super glue incident and embarrassment. There's even glue right here. I got a little bit of this was just a bad adventure. Anyways, but now this works, but because I looked, and I have a very organized area. I don't know how it's, I don't know. It's fallen behind something, or it attached itself to something. I need to find it, because I got to glue this other one in. I glued the one in here in, but that's one thing I'll complain about this Argon case is these falling out. I'm glad the Pi wasn't on. It was being tested still, but yeah, that annoyed me greatly that these are broke. Now look at this, because it's got one magnet missing. It doesn't sit down level, but yes. Anyways, I like this case. I don't spend a lot of time testing Pi cases. I'm actually, even though I'm friends with Jeff, I'm like many of you. I just watch Jeff's reviews or read his reviews on Pi cases, and I chose this one because it just seemed to be the best Pi case for some projects I want to play with. Connection to data center and backup. Will you do that with UDM Pro site to site or via VPN with pfSense? I don't understand the question, but yes, they both support site to site VPNs, pfSense and UDM. I learned not to use super glue in front of a running air conditioner. It sets in 10 seconds. I glue my fingers together as well. Good. I'm not alone. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the donation, Doug. That is awesome. Those Argon cases are nice, but have weird USB pass-through issues where some dongles seem to work. Yeah, only some dongles. Yes. That was actually the thing I noticed, is that you have to pass some parameters through to get the Argon case to work properly. You get these weird errors until you do it. There's a script they run, and you're just setting a few things inside there. That's what led to this picture, was me trying to figure out why it gives wattage errors. I wanted to see how much wattage was going through it on the Pi 4 when it's in the case versus not in the case, and how much more. I was just goofing around with that. I did not document it very well. I'd make a video on it. I also didn't make a video because I think you could appropriately tell me that this may not be accurate. And until I take something like my nicer fluke meter and really do some accuracy testing, I don't know how accurate this is. Do you think consumer boards will get more PCIe storage? Many boards only have 2 M2 slots. I don't know. Maybe there's um there's maybe a growing demand for NVMe as it becomes more popular, so we'll get more slots on there. But yeah, I don't know. There's a couple of challenges, and one of them is the consumer equipment doesn't always have enough PCIe lanes to do it as well. So it's not just a matter of sticking the ports on there. You want the ports not to be shared on a bus. You want them to have more direct access. So there's other challenges that come with some of the processors. But as the whole system evolves, we have substantially more power than we had back in the 286, 386, 486 days back in, forever ago. So as it iterates, it'll definitely get better. Hey, awesome. Thank you very much. Interrupting the flow. Can you help guide me to restricting DNS with UniFi? I don't know what you're trying to do. That's probably a better forum post. So without knowing the goal, I'm not exactly sure what to say about restricting DNS. Start with the goal. You're asking a question of how to restrict it. I mean, there is, and by the way, I guess UniFi bundles it. Let me look. My assumption is they probably, where is my UniFi server? There we go. That's what I'm looking for. This is the new firewall. If anyone hasn't seen it, the new look that UniFi has. Mm, yeah, I don't want that. Content filtering. So content filtering is different than your, I don't know what you want to call it, your IPS IDS. They're kind of similar, but not exactly the same. But they do at least have some application blocking. So if you're trying to do blocking in here, this is where you could do it. Like you want to search and add these, block these. Is this what this is? Yeah, ensures privacy and security DNS traffic through DNS HTTPS. This is where you do it. I don't really have a guide for it at all. That's where all the DNS settings are. So weird issue of WireGuard. I had to set forwarding to disabled on the Wi-Fi. I don't use Windows enough and with WireGuard to have any answer on that. Businesses still use the OpenVPN is way more popular for Windows. High-end consumer boards are covered in NVMe slots and are missing PCIe slots. Yeah, it is hard. Finding a board that's not a commercial grade board that has enough PCIe slots is a thing. One of the use cases I will probably, I'm gesturing towards this HL15 that is currently awaiting these fans to be put into it because it's sitting on the desk next to me. It has a nice commercial board in there with plenty of slots, and I'd like to consolidate my recording computer. The reason my recording computer is set up how it is mostly has to do with it needs more pass through with more cards. And I might be able to dual purpose this HL15 so it can run my recording system right on the NAS by having as I need to run recording in Windows, love or hate that, mostly hate, but that's how life works. I need to pass through a USB controller and I need to pass through 2 capture cards. Being able to do that is going to be a bit tricky, but that's on my to-do list with the HL15 to consolidate my servers into one because I can instead of having it separate. But for the moment and for quite a while, it'll probably remain separate servers. What are your favorite Docker use cases? Ooh, that's a good one. Hold on, is it running right now? Yes, it is. I'm going to say this is my favorite Docker use case. Is Chasm. I mean, among them, not my only, but Chasm is interesting. It lets you create disposable instances of things. Hold on, let me make sure before I do something. There we go. So this is a disposable workspace that's it's behind a VPN. And this allows me to spin up things right away that I can test and always have behind a VPN. It's called Chasm, K-A-S-Z-M, K-A-S-M. I'm sorry, not Z. It's said to me like Chasm with a Z. But it's really cool because this is a virtualized workspace that I can do things on or delete the session. Let's go ahead and kill it. Destroy the session, and it comes back to the desktop. Let's say if I needed a Kali Linux desktop, go ahead and launch it. There. And there's a countdown. In 6 hours, if I do nothing, this will go away. And it's instantly running. That's technically in Docker, but there, once again, I can pull and it's behind that VPN IP. Yeah, Chasm is awesome if you haven't played with it. Hey, reach out to me. I'm an easy person to find if you want me on a podcast. I think you already have my real email, but Homelab at Lawrence Systems will come to me. Do you like where UBNT is going with routing? Can start to make a dent into the pfSense market? Do you see them different customers? No, I think they're going to and already are definitely making a big dent into the pfSense market. There's no doubt. Their firewalls, as they ramp them up, are definitely getting better. So favorite Docker use case, being able to spin up complex installs, modifying some environment variable in a compose file, then doing Docker compose up, boom, running. Yes, it's so fast. I don't think we're going to get a Citrix alternative. I think delivering applications that way is a terrible idea. It's a Band-Aid on a problem. For the business world, we're going to see, and we already are seeing, more and more things go to web-delivered applications. And I'm here for it because gluing on so things come through a web interface that weren't designed to go through a web interface, like when you do that type of delivery of remote desktop, it's not ideal. But building things web native, I think, builds a better system, especially when you can host the web native thing. So it's not like I'm saying it has to be hosted in the cloud somewhere, but for businesses, there's some appropriateness to building a web application so everyone has the same common interface. So I don't have to manage 1,000 desktops. I have a server in my building where all my customer data is that is server accessible. I think it's just a better architecture and design. Last week you mentioned a technology history related documentary channel. Oh yeah. Well, there's 2 of them and I'll pull them up. They just did a really good one, by the way. Which is, and I'll throw this in here, the serial port. So I'll throw this one out here. I think they do some really top-notch work. They go through the trouble of interviewing people and everything else. I say go through trouble because as a creator, I know how much work that is. The downside is, of course, as much as I want to do it, it's not by accident. When you say, look, they did a video 6 days ago, 1 month ago, 3 months ago, it takes months to put these together. And I kind of want to, I do plan on reaching out to them. That's, I got them bookmarked for that, to reach out, donate some money to them because they have a Patreon, and see if I can help them in some way to produce content. And I want to watch it. So I have my own self-interest, but I think the things I want to share and maybe the connections I can put them with would be kind of fun. Maybe I should interview some of those people as well, because I love the history of a lot of that. The other one is hold on, it's on the tip of my tongue. Man, I can't remember the name of it right now. There is another one though that's pretty. It's the serial port is probably one of the best ones for some of the, because they're diving into a lot of deep networking topics. So let me find that other channel. Retrobytes. I like this channel too. That's the one I'm looking for. Retrobytes is the other one. Let me throw a link in here for people. Retrobytes doesn't dive as much into the interviews, but still has a lot of great content and history on things. Well, this is where you're not, I doubt UniFi is going to go there. They're trying to fit the use case for the 99%, not the 1%. I don't think they're going to get certain advanced features. It's weird to me that Ubiquity threw in BGP. Weird to me that they put the work into BGP at all or anything related to that, because they're not the most common request for Ubiquity. I think QoS might be something in a roadmap. Better handling of DHCP, granular control, that would be good. But yeah. Do you think Windows thin clients still matter in environment? No, I think the death of thin clients will happen as well. Yeah, that's a great documentary. It was really fun. You said Collab Retro. Let me pull that one up. I see, sometimes I watch them, but I don't subscribe to them because they don't have many other videos that I liked. But okay, I'll check this one out too. I'll add it to my list. I don't wait. Did he do? Yes, I already have watched it. I watched this video. I used to manage IBM RS-6000s, so I absolutely was nostalgic for this particular video. You know, I watched the interview with Linus Tech Tips. Let me put this on my list. There we go. There we go. But I watched the Linus video. This is the retro one that someone meant. Anyways, the Linus video was really interesting, and there's a lot of tidbits I picked up, and I posted them on my LinkedIn. One of them, though, I found really interesting is that Linus, he doesn't watch a lot of YouTube, and he said why, and it makes 100% sense to me that he doesn't want to ever be stealing someone else's idea by not watching it. And I'm kind of the same way. I don't watch a lot of other YouTubers that are like myself. I watch some retro things, and then I watch personal interest things. And that is more common for the actual YouTube that I consume, like what's in my personal watch history. Why do you find BGP essential in UniFi? That's a weird one to me. Oh, Microsoft thinks otherwise, yeah, but Microsoft has so much money, and I hopefully, so Ed Zitron, if you want to go into a rant, read some of Ed Zitron's work, and he talks a lot about the I like he calls it the .com economy. And it's all these companies not even producing good things. They're just producing anything they can to try to capture more market. Cory Doctorow talks about this, and Ed mentions Cory Doctorow as well, and the enshittification of products. And these large corporate companies are just producing any trash they can to try to get money out of us at every turn. How can we make the subscription higher? How can we make the product and put less effort in, pay less people to produce a product while extracting more wealth out of the people that use it? There's no one that seems to care. It's all this line must go up and to the right at all costs type of mentality, not about creating good tech. And sometimes when I rant about these large companies, people think I'm bitter about tech. And I'm like, I'm not at all. I am enthusiastic about things like XCP-NG and Proxmox and virtualization and storage and the Homelab, where people take control over their own data. Super excited about that. I am less excited that every turn there seems to be some company doing something egregiously bad with our privacy, with our rights, and it annoys me. I think, though, it annoys many of you, which is why you're here, and why Homelab at lawrencesystems.com is where I get to hear from you, because, yes, it's fun talking about all the Homelab. And the reason we're all so excited about Homelab is because we don't want to just surrender ownership of any media or any of our stuff or our privacy to these cloud companies and then pay them for the privilege of screwing us. Replacing Raspberry Pi client with Rumia. I mean, I'm assuming you're just talking about using the VNC protocol. That's my guess. Wait, the serial port has a second channel called the parallel port? Hold on. I need to look at this. What goes on the parallel port? Here, we'll share a screen. We're going on this adventure together. Oh, similar content. Okay. They only have, what do they have here? A couple old videos. Oh man, that's cool. I like that they have a PS2.
Today we're going to be checking out the
I used to work on these. These were this is stuff I used to do when if you want to know what my first job in tech was, it was in the earlier 90s setting up PS2 IBMs. So yeah, now I'll probably watch that tonight. Oh, I agree with BGP being an amazing routing protocol, but yeah, we just don't see that many VPNs or commercial use of UniFi. I see more home users UniFi. It's trickling into the small business market. I've not seen many people with a lot of UniFis and VPN set up. I think they're getting there, and I think there's going to be some popularity in the future for it. Yeah, random video came up, and I just ended up watching. It was a clip from a video. It was about programming, and they were talking about Visual Studio. I think that's what they were talking about, the tool itself. And they were talking about how bad Microsoft is. And this person is a long time programmer. And they were talking about how fast it used to be. And he had done a demo that was really, that's the part that caught my eye, of how these projects, he was opening a project that was 15 years old. Opening up in modern Visual Studio was so slow compared to this really old version of Visual Studio on vintage hardware that was so much faster. So he's matching the hardware, matching what it was back then, just to show it's a big challenge right now. I look at the stuff that Steve Gibson does over at GRC, and I love the fact that his downloads are kilobytes, not megabytes, because of the kind of everything's like this giant bloated framework that we can just throw non-optimized software at because we have enough power. I mean, this Raspberry Pi, for as little as it costs, has a phenomenal amount of power. So why write good software? We can write good enough software. I don't know. Do I know if FRR works with shadow mode? No idea. Maybe you're not asking me, but I know I'm at least among the people that doesn't know. Yes, they need a modern channel called the USB port. Is there going to be a new video about installing? Not likely. Part of me wants to do a video telling you why you shouldn't use it. It just seems to break. And it's hard to keep, as a creator, it's hard to keep up with videos on how to use it. And I feel bad recommending anyone use Nextcloud on TrueNAS because if every update breaks, you just have a terrible experience. So if I make a video and it works until it doesn't. And then people go, but my experience is terrible because I have a broken Nextcloud install again. I feel like Nextcloud, I don't know. I don't use it because it breaks too often. So I don't know what the answer is, but I feel, I don't know. I feel Nextcloud is probably just not the best solution anymore. Everyone complains about how broken it is every time it updates. It seems to be less complaints by people who host it in Docker, but any experience in TrueNAS has been terrible with it. I think that TP-Link doesn't care about security and makes garbage products. So I don't really think of it as a situation. If you're going to ban TP-Link for being insecure, ban the other companies too. Have a better conversation. But I've preached against TP-Link for a long time for their terrible product. So yeah. Yeah, USB-C is my favorite thing because of that. Do you think ACL management on TrueNAS will ever improve? I think they always want to improve it, but it's being built by engineers. Engineers don't build things that are, I don't know. What did someone say the other day? And it really made me laugh that you end up with like what it's like being a front end developer. Basically, you have some savant who built this incredibly good system. You're handed with the task of putting something pretty on top of it to make it functional for the end user. And they said that's kind of like the dilemma you're at all the time. And I think they're right about that. Yeah. Nextcloud just is, it seems like every update breaks something, especially there's like, oh, you have to change this or change that. And it's weird because IX Systems announced like, hey, we're partnering with Nextcloud to make a better experience. The experience has been trash. And I don't know the answer to it. So you had yours break after an update and you were using their Docker version. I've had people tell me that. Yeah. What's the alternative for Nextcloud? That's the thing. I don't know if there's a good alternative, but my solution pretty much is I just don't think every document needs to live in a web browser. Maybe I'm weird, but I actually have documents stored on my computer like some weird old guy. This gray hair, that's real. I don't dye it this color. I've been slowly turning gray, and now I'm guessing old man yells at cloud now includes me. Going, why do my documents have to live somewhere else? Why can't I just save documents on my computer? Turns out documents, thousands of them, millions of them, barely take up any storage in reference to how much storage we have available on anything. I can store my entire library of business documents on a small Raspberry Pi with room to spare. I use SyncThing. I use local documents and SyncThing. I might do a video on that. Why I'm not using Nextcloud, use this instead. I'm going old school, man. Yeah, back up before you update. Old man yells at cloud computing. Maybe that's the title of my next vlog. Thoughts on UniFi routing hardware? Do you still shy away from recommending it over UniFi improved enough to meet your expectations? I always start with what's your use case? Does it fit your need? Someone had mentioned not like they have some very specific use cases for QoS. That does not exist in UniFi. So if your use case is, I need really advanced QoS, don't use UniFi. If your use case is, I need routing and I need a site-to-site VPN. Those are two features that UniFi works fine on. So I think if your use case is met with UniFi, awesome, use it. It's not a terrible platform. It's now become a lot better. The firewall rules, as I was pointing out earlier, are substantially better than they were. So we go over here to our leave. There we go. They've made them look a lot better. They built this zone matrix and lets you filter for the policies, which I think is great. VPN and SMB shares suck. VPN, SMB was never made to go over VPN. I think I've even made a video demonstrating the problems with running SMB or VPN. It's not that you can't, it just is not a great experience. It's not Syncthing, because I want to keep all my documents private, not using any cloud services. Syncthing is my go-to system for that, and it works amazing. I think Syncthing is the absolute solution that I've been using for a long time. I have my you can log into like, whoop, is it that one? No. Yeah, this one. If I logged into my TrueNAS here, ooh, there's another update. Fancy. I'll look at that later, but let's go to the Syncthing app here. But I use Syncthing. There's my Pixel 9. There's my MacBook Air. There's another system. There's another virtual machine I have called Fabric that's connected. And there's Tom's desktop. They're all in sync to each other. All the things I need synced are 100% synced right now. Syncthing is like just an easy go-to solution. It works, and I've not had it break anything. Tailscale is fine too. I have no problems. If you like Tailscale, use it. Tailscale and NetBird are both two really popular solid solutions. Yes, SMB3 is better, but it's still not 100% wonderful. Do you have any videos experience with TrueNAS iSCSI for VM backup storage as in target for XCP-NG? You don't use, when you're looking at targets for your storage, you can't, well, I mean, there's probably some hacky way to do it, but officially, the storage inside of XCP-NG can be NFS, local, SMB, or Amazon S3. iSCSI is not an option. So if you're doing backups, they're going to go to one of these locations. For syncing to the phone, I recommend Synology Drive and choose folder files you want offline. Yeah. Synology Drive's not bad too. It's not open source. I lean towards open source. I do use LibreOffice for all my documents, but LibreOffice works great. Matter of fact, LibreOffice has arguably more functionality than Nextcloud in every way. So I'm really happy using it. Putting things in spreadsheets. I don't worry about, oh no, will someone, break into my Nextcloud and get data out of it. This seems less likely for them to. I guess they could copy my documents if they somehow got on my system, but I don't know. Do you still use SyncThing in a jail on TrueNAS Core? I do not use SyncThing on TrueNAS Core at all because I've gotten rid of, I have one TrueNAS Core server left. One. Just not a big TrueNAS Core person anymore. But somewhere notes about vulnerabilities in IO control in the latest TrueNAS Core update notes. Yeah, TrueNAS Core, I mean, we have clients using it in production, but never with any jails. They just are using it as a storage target. Oh, let's see. What else was I talking about here? Oh, 512 versus the block sizes. Yeah, they're limited use case. It comes down to, it's the same thing when you're setting anything up in storage. What's your use case? That is my biggest question when I do consulting, is understanding what is your goal. They always come at me with, I'm trying to get this problem solved. And they tell me about the problem they're having with a VDEV or whatever. Or they ask me questions like, what's the best stripe size? Well, I don't know what you're running on it, so I can't answer that question. It starts with what's the goal? What are you running first? Once I know those things and what your goals are, then we can start designing a solution. A SyncThing video would be helpful. I've already done a SyncThing video. I did one very recently. So I have a where is it at here? I'll throw it in the link here. But yeah, I just did a couple videos on SyncThing. One all about SyncThing and one dedicated to SyncThing on TrueNAS. Matter of fact, it was published. It's about a few months old. How easy is it to migrate to Core to Scale? They have a migration process. I've done a video on it. You can do an in-place migration. There's some caveats. Just make sure, and I mentioned the caveats in the video. It's on their site. It's in their documentation. So I've got a tutorial how to do it, or you can read how to do it, and both are accurate. You can do an in-place migration, provided you're not using the do you call it GELI or GELI? I've heard GELI encryption, which is the old style encryption. If you're using that, you can't do a migration. You have to reload. If you are not using that and you have an unencrypted system, then yeah, you can do it in place. I threw the link in here though. This is my latest SyncThing video. So SyncThing, open source file source tool. So it will go a couple clicks and it worked. Okay, so someone who's done it recently. As they update versions, the only thing that my video is going to say is what versions it'll update to. But that obviously changes because I'm not going to make a new video every time they release a new version, because it'll say, hey, you're going to upgrade from TrueNAS Core to TrueNAS Scale and then the version number. That's in their documentation. Thank you. I'm so happy that helped. I've never done a video on it, but yes, I have used Guacamole. I thought it was cool. I'm torn on this. So I was going to do a video, but I like to do videos that I cover things that I actually use. And I don't actually use it. I played with it to see how it worked. I don't like the idea of putting SSH keys into the browser to like do the Guacamole through SSH. It's kind of cool that you can do things through the browser, but I'm still happy just SSHing from the command line. I don't know. I got to play with it some more, but I think Guacamole is a cool, interesting project. And I imagine some people do have a use case for it. I don't see Unraid as a enterprise tool at all. I see it as a easier to use than TrueNAS with less performance product that exists that makes a lot of people happy. It's got a good ecosystem. It's got a good community. It seems to be rather solid. So I don't think it's really business focused, but it is definitely people who want to run a nice NAS system with good support for a lot of Docker stuff. It seems to fit the bill. Can you use network with multiple sites on a VPS to point to a specific reverse proxy? I don't know. I guess I'd have to better understand what you're trying to solve. Oh man, SharePoint syncing and OneDrive conflicts? Yes, it's a disaster. The SMB over VPN is the bane of every help desk and every network engineer. Yep. Open source apps that you haven't covered. Oh, there's a ton of them. I actually want to do a video on, where did this go? Well, one of them is going to be this, Chasm. Chasm is open source, so I want to do a video on Chasm. I'm happy I got the video done on Home Assistant. I think there's an interest people have, and I want to, it's been around long enough. I want to see where their status is, and please let me know if you know the answer to this question, so I don't have to search it and reach out to me on this. I want to do a video on RustDesk, and I think RustDesk is pretty cool. They have a self-hosted system on there. It seems pretty neat. I just don't know where they're at with security auditing. RustDesk security audit. So actually, I found a post on it, but let me see what it says. Yeah. People asking for a security audit. But I think RustDesk would be a cool one to do a video on, and talking about ways to mitigate issues with it. Why would I want an Uptime Kuma alternative? Like, I don't find Uptime Kuma broken in any way. So with Uptime Kuma working, what's the missing feature that you need an alternative is my question. Can you suggest a low power home server? I think the B-Link system works good. I did a review of some of I'm using the B-Link one right now myself, and I have not had any issues at all with I've actually not had any issues with a few other ones that aren't B-Link. So where's this one at? I'm running all my Homelab stuff right now. Does it tell me the model here? Probably not. I know if you look it up in my channel, it's the AMD 7 Ryzen 7 8H45S. I did a review of this B-Link system. I've been using it for a while. It just seems to work with no issues. Like, I got no complaints about it at all. Asking Tom about RAID is like has to be poked in the eye. Like I said, I don't have anything against on RAID. It just doesn't perform the way I want it to perform, so it won't work for me, so I don't use it. Any tips on saving data from my system before I put a new drive in and reuse my older dual Xeon? I don't really understand, like, you want help backing things up? I don't know where your data is. So you have to understand first where your data is to make sure it's backed up. I always know where my data is, so I don't ever think about backups. I don't really deal with consumer stuff enough. Honestly, I tell consumers to get a Chromebook. If you're not into tech and you're not into home labbing and self-hosting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, my answer to the home user market that ask me, relatives I may have or friends that just are not into tech at any measure, which, by the way, some of my friends, like some of my wife's friends that don't use tech at all, they don't even have a computer. They do everything on their phone, which is strange to me. Or maybe they have one old laptop that's like 6 years old. But I tell them, get a Chromebook. That's kind of been my go-to answer. If they want something a little bit nicer, I say get a Mac and use whatever tools probably come with it. But I don't really spend time in the consumer market. I mean, there's nothing to prep. You load XCP-NG and next and yes, and enjoy the happiness of it working. Yeah, I do wish there was more fanless tech. I think there's a, what is it, lilpudding.com? There's some places that keep track of different things that are out there. You kind of have to go into the custom route when you start wanting to not have fans. It's one of the reasons. I mean, this does have a fan in it, but it spins very little. I like that these cases do most of the heat dissipation for the Raspberry Pi, the Argon case. But yeah, I wish there was. I hope we get more systems out there. But the other side, think about it from a manufacturing standpoint. What costs more, putting a fan in it or a big chunk of metal? I think the big chunk of metal has a bigger overall cost because it increases manufacturing and shipping costs simultaneously just to not have a fan. I hope that changes. I love things with passively cooled, but it is what it is. I glossed over. Well, I mean, I wasn't doing a review of it, but I can certainly. This is something I will review in the future. It's definitely just a fun thing to play with. Matter of fact, because I was switching between things, you notice how it paused. I can actually go and resume and pull up that Kali session that I was working on here. Chasm, KASM is, let me pull up the site and throw people links. It's chasmweb.com, but you can download this yourself. It's free. It's open source. I will do a video in the future on it. So Uptime Kumi, you're missing a status page that shows all services without scrolling. I mean, yeah, you could just modify the CSS if you really need them all on one page. Uptime Kuma, I never look at the interface. I have it send me notices when things go down. So the scrolling doesn't bother me. I have it sending me a notice when something goes down because that's the value of Uptime Kuma, is not to visualize everything on one page, but to automated via notifications. Let me know when I have to do something. Please contact me because I need to take action. That's how my use case for Uptime Kuma is. That's why I don't think about a replacement for it, because I love its simplicity. That is what keeps a platform popular. You look at any company that tries to be the everything store because they've got some investors that keep pushing them to do it. They start doing they do their core thing that made them popular, and they do a lot of terrible things after that are not so popular. And I like the fact that, like Uptime Kuma, it monitors with several different methodologies of monitoring. It goes, hey, awesome. This is what I do. I do it well. End of story. We're not moving. We're just doing the one thing that we do. And that's why I think Uptime Kuma is so cool. Yeah. Once you get outside of this space right here, of us people who would actually watch a live stream where somebody rambles on about tech for 2 hours and 3 minutes so far, you find people who only use their phone. What is the best way to remote into a home network? Like most secure, I'm rocking pfSense for routing and firewall, but love controlling some ham radio equipment from Windows. I think VPN with pfSense is solid for remote access. Just use that. The reason I want to review, and I have not reviewed it, but I think it's a novel option. If it's behind a VPN, I wouldn't publicly expose it. I think Rustdesk might be one of those ones for people who are looking for a way to do it. I want to test it a little more. I've heard a lot of people ask me about it and tell me how well it works. I want to validate that. I want to play with some more Apache guacamole, because that might be a fun way to do it, because you can push things through a web interface. I'm amazed at how responsive Chasm is, even over a VPN. Like, this is all running in a browser. I'm not sharing a a instance over VNC. It's technically, Chasm is a bunch of different technologies put together, which does include things like, if I'm not mistaken, underneath they're running a lot of the same things that Apache Guacamole runs, or maybe they're have a piece of Apache Guacamole in here. I think that's what makes this kind of cool, that I can hit a web interface. And eventually I imagine you can go through here and add, where's it at? Yeah, the registry here. So I can add a lot more things in here. I wonder if Apache Guacamole is one of them on here. I can play Super Tux Kart in the browser this way. I think these things are kind of cool. I think there's fun things that can be done with this. Oh, there's a Zoom session in here. That's cool. But yeah, VPN and pick your remote access tool of choice. Do you use EDR for your Linux endpoints? No, I do not. Your thoughts on mini forums PCs? I know the US is anti-China taxpayer, but some of these PCs are pretty cool. I think the mini forums ones are pretty popular and should be pretty good. I haven't used many of the mini forums ones. I've used some of the B-links, but I know Wendell from Level 1 Techs has covered them favorably. I trust Wendell a lot, as I believe many of you do as well. So check out Wendell's reviews on the mini forums PCs. Yeah, I seen someone talked about this last time, that they're pausing feature updates for Dockage while because Dockage is written by the same person who writes Uptime Kuma. They had a post that they're pausing Dockage updates while they do a rewrite of Uptime Kuma. So new features are coming to Uptime Kuma. Someone said Dockage is unsupported, and a developer not adding new features does not mean something has fallen out of support. It just means it's not going to get any new things cool. Well, yeah. If you're spinning up operating systems and virtualizing them, I have a VM running a bunch of other, Docker containers with these other things in there. It's going to take some resources to run Chasm, that's for sure. Have you looked at Tetragon for open source EDR? No, I have not. Never heard of it before. I don't understand all the hype on Dockage. Dockage just gives you a nice web interface for people that don't want to learn the command line for Docker. So does, what's the other one? I can't remember the name of it. Shout it out, crowd. What is the other really Portainer? Now it's in my head. I didn't even look in the comments. Portainer is another popular one too. Is it better to run reverse proxy on pfSense for a separate Docker server? That depends. I like having it all in one place because it's greatly convenient. But if someone were to say, Tom, you have to build a really robust environment, we have a big budget for this, and you can run all separate servers. Well, I'll run everything in separate servers. There's this debate back and forth, and you'll certainly find videos of me talking about why it's good to run in separate servers, and then people calling me out for running HA proxy inside of pfSense. It's a consolidation thing. Like, if there's the budget, running separate servers, because if a server gets compromised, you're worried about lateral movement. If HA proxy is running your pfSense, they find a flaw in HA proxy, they also just got into your pfSense. That's bad. So running separate servers with isolation is helpful for that. That way, if it's a separate server and someone cracks that separate server, well, they've gotten into that server and you only have to protect from lateral movement to that. But of course, if they get into your proxy, they're into a place where many things are. You have bigger problems and bigger fish to fry. But yes, separate servers is always going to be more secure, but which way works for you? Portainer is convoluted trash. Some people like it. Some people call it convoluted trash. Run each of your app on a separate blade server. You know, just to touch on, where was I? Like Graylog, for example. If you were to look at what's running on here, as far as like the Docker containers that are running in here, you'll find Graylog and NetData. I just, for the hell of it, threw NetData in a container on this, so I didn't have to load it natively. That's the only things running on this. I do not have Portainer. I do not use Dockage. I just use Docker from the command line. But I mentioned those other apps because web UIs make it easier for more people to use these things than learning Docker from the command line. I update Docker from the command line. I'm fine with doing that, but I know not everybody is. I've been interested in, I don't know what that word is, infiscale swarm. Never used it, so I have no opinions on it. Have you ever used CTOP for Docker? No, I have not. I also don't use a ton of Docker. It's not my day job at all. Oh, CTOP is a command line tool that provides monitor. Okay, neat. But no, I haven't used it. But I like this. Is it open source, I hope? That looks cool. Let's see here. So you can run it inside of Docker, which is cool. I love terminal utilities. They make me happy. I'm definitely going to check this out. I'm making a note of it right now to check this out. All right. I put everything, for those of you wondering, I'm still using LogSeek. That's where my notes are coming from or going to. You all are very helpful. Like this is cool. I want to play with this today. Oh, you can go into the Docker shell from there. See, that's real convenience because I don't go in the Docker shell very often. Something has gone wrong if I'm in a Docker shell, and which doesn't happen very often. So I want to be able to be like, boom, I just want to know this. So, man, I think thank you very much. This is awesome. Yeah, this is really cool. Let me share the GitHub page I'll throw both in here. I'm going to throw them in the stream, but for anyone else who wants to check this out. The site is just ctop.sh. But awesome. Thank you very much. I genuinely want to play with this. Do I have any viewpoints on authentication? The majority of our clients are using Entra. That's the nature of it. If you work in the small business world, that's the most popular one out there. I think we might have some people with Okta, but more so we have people with Entra ID. It is the most popular SSO solution. Okta's right up there. I just remember my wife used to work for a company that used Okta, but she doesn't anymore. I think her old company used it. There's a few companies we know that are using Google as well, Google SSO for things. But yes, the future of business security, not as much, I mean, to some extent in the Homelab, but not really. the future of business security and where the market is shifting is what we refer to as ID centric authentication. Everything around you is your security. The way your tokens are established starts with an SSO solution and then goes out from there. I have thought about talking about this from a business standpoint and having a good talk put together with my friend Matt. This is something he talks a lot about. And that is where security is going for the business world. It comes down to integrations. There's open source stuff out there, OpenID. There's a open source SOAP. There's a couple of them. Keycloak. That was another one that I know a lot of people asked about. Authentic. So there's several of them out there. OpenID, Keycloak, Authentic. I don't really use any of them. We're just not seeing them adopted in the business markets yet. Maybe there's a future where they are. But I'm more than anything else seeing Entra ID in the market we work in. Yeah, actually, as the ecosystem becomes more compatible, yes, there's going to be more stuff out there for this. I'm not using any of it. We don't see it every day. It's not an everyday thing that we're seeing. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not something I use. So I don't have any like strong feelings on it, like, oh, it's terrible or whatever. Yeah. So you're tired of the constant Okta checks. Yeah. Okta's certainly made some terrible mistakes over time and lost a lot of public trust over it. Identity management's where things are going, but it doesn't mean that it's going easy or well. But there's a few options out there. It's not something, like I said, I spend a lot of time on. And when people want to set up in their home lab, I wouldn't bother unless it's for a learning experience. Like, I don't care as much about SSO for things. And you'll find more often than not, all the things you want to sign into, especially for the home lab, don't have it. The enterprise world is a little different. There's a lot of integrations, but still there's not enough companies offering SSO integration. It drives me nuts how many companies don't have that. Citadel, I've heard of that one too. I've not used any of them, but yeah, they're all out there. And what's going to make any of these, yeah, I know there's some VC backing on there, but it's hard to bet against Microsoft. One of the biggest things that we do is look at the ease of use. Like, how hard is it to manage this entire platform over here, or sign up with your Entra ID because they're going to use it anyways. You're going to have, most businesses already have, the Microsoft E5 licenses. A lot of, well, not the tiniest business, but lots of companies are already using E5 licensing. They're already in the Microsoft ecosystem. They're using a bunch of the Microsoft garbage, and that's going to be like deeply integrated for chemical factory. We did some work for. I can't remember the name of the tool they used, but when I was talking to him, I believe that was the only sign-in option. Matter of fact, some companies are like that. That's like, we only support your Azure SSO. That's where our integration lives. That drives it. Your business applications drive more than anything else. The line of business apps drive what authenticator you're going to use, how you integrate into it. That's huge in terms of where that is. Yeah, VC backed identity seems like a great way to have your users migrate. Yeah, unfortunately, too many of these problems. Yes, it just they're going to build it and shitify it and move on. these are some of the challenges. Compatibility. I don't really spend a lot of time using these, so I don't have I have strong opinions that I think the world's going towards a more identity centric security posture because it's easier. And with most things, for many of the businesses we do, many of them are using web applications, even large companies. The chemical factory tour we did, the entire chemical factory has no servers in it because everything they do now is a web application. The entire inventory for this massive facility all runs over the internet, all of it. And they have multiple locations. They don't even have a VPN between the locations because they don't need it. It's not on, they don't have a reason to VPN back into their office. Everything's a web application. Any thoughts in self-hosting versus using something like Let's Encrypt? I mean, I don't have I have self-signed certificates on lots of things because I don't care. I don't log into them. I put them on occasionally. I have a certificate on Home Assistant because I want to. So, and I use the Let's Encrypt cert. I think Let's Encrypt certs work perfectly fine. They work actually very well. So my preferences for Let's Encrypt certs, they're kind of become a standard, if you will. I feel so many companies using them. And I have no downside to using Let's Encrypt certs. I just don't put a cert on everything because I've had people tell me that the Dell iDRAC has a hard time with certs. And I'm sitting there going, how often are you in Dell iDRAC that you're worried about the self-signed cert? Some people seem to be really bothered by the self-signed cert and we're willing to put a lot of time into figuring out why whatever protocol they're using doesn't work well with a self-sign with a Let's Encrypt cert through a reverse proxy. And it's something about the way Dell handles updates. I don't remember what it was. There's a forum discussion in it. I don't think the person ever solved it. So I don't know. Even when I'm reloading stuff and reloading servers, I go into the iDRAC because I need to reload it, but it's not that I'm in there so much that I go, man, this self-signed cert is driving me crazy. It just doesn't. Maybe I'm just immune to it. My problem with Cloudflare Zero Trust is you still are trusting Cloudflare for better or worse. I don't have a problem with Cloudflare. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you are adding Cloudflare to your circle of trust because you're running their reverse proxy software. But it works. It's a very popular service. My challenge with any of these companies, everything's free until it's not. And Cloudflare is a big company, and someone can point out, as they will, that the Cloudflare tunnels are a loss leader. They can provide it indefinitely for free. They can. I don't know if they will. I know they can. I know it's not something that is going to hurt the bottom line of Cloudflare. Cloudflare can continue to give you that service for free, but always have a plan B when you're relying on someone's platform that either A, you may have to pay for the service, or B, the service may go away because they don't feel like doing it anymore. Anything that is integrated into your enterprise ADP should have a real cert. Well, that's different. Yeah. I certainly don't recommend home user and Homelab playing around with Dell iDRAC. You know what my end users never log into? The iDRAC. So do we have certs on iDRAC at clients? No, not at all. Why would we? The only time we're in the iDRAC is because something has gone wrong. And honestly, the business stuff is so much more tame than the Homelab, especially from a consulting standpoint. Most of the stuff's going on in businesses is set it and forget it. Like, we make sure it's patched and up to date and monitored. End of story. And unless it fails, which, don't get me wrong, stuff breaks, things fail, then we're in there. But when it doesn't, I mean, I've got some clients that's amazing. We have a client, we've been bugging him to replace his servers for years. I mean, I installed these things in 2018 and I'm like, dude, we got you some used servers to get you by in 2018 when you didn't have the budget. You've since bought a brand new house. You've bought several cars, you go on fancy vacations. Those servers that you're supposed to replace by 2020, yeah, it's 2025. You should probably think about replacing them. And I'm kind of happy that they're working. I mean, there's not, like he points out to me, there's nothing wrong with my servers. Why should I replace them? They run his workload fine. I'm like, well, they were several years old, like about 5-year-old servers when we put them in to solve your immediate problem of your 10-year-old servers dying. But yeah, sometimes it's hard to get people to do these. But either way, before I wandered and segued off topic, we don't log in iDirect very often unless something's going wrong. You think Cloudflare's an NSA front company? I doubt that's true, but hey, whatever. Yeah. You're not selling them servers. You're telling them the cost of risk mitigation. Yep. I know that person's not going to replace the servers. It's the same reason. The writing's on the wall. You've been in business long enough. You get to know the people. He's selling the company. You don't have to tell me that. The writing's on the wall. He's investing as little as possible because the company's for sale. You find out the company's for sale frequently is why, because why would we just got to make the company numbers look good? We don't actually have to make the back end look good. So someone's going to buy it, and they probably won't even assume the technical debt. They probably want his contracts for the market he's in. His contracts are where the money's at. They'll buy his contracts and throw away his tech. So why bother upgrading it? Doesn't do it. So I don't use Kubernetes. So no, I have no plans to make Kubernetes content. There's so many people making Kubernetes content. I always wonder why people want me to make Kubernetes content. I'm glad you addressed the doom and gloom attitude being created around a single company. Why would anyone buy a company which doesn't maintain anything? Happens all the time. The only thing that when you're purchasing a company, frequently you're throwing it out. If you already have tech, let's say, and this is what the marketplace is for one of these clients, they're in transportation. The value of the transportation, like the contracts that the company has, they have a fleet of trucks that are moving freight from where it is to where people want it to be. That contract has a value. That value is around $80 million worth of money goes through that company. And someone wants their contracts. Someone wants the salespeople. So they will absorb the company. They want the salespeople because the salespeople have the relationships with the $80 million worth of freight. They need some people who know how to manage the dispatch, and they want the drivers to drive the freight. They won't use any of the tech. When this company gets bought, which is likely what will happen, and I've watched this happen a lot, especially in the transportation markets, they buy them for the contracts. The technology's not, what are they going to do with it? They're like, cool, you got a database. We have a database already. We're just going to take all that sales data and stick it in our database. And then we're going to turn all that off and throw it to the recyclers. And that's it. I don't think people realize, especially in the manufacturing world, just how big those contracts are. I mean, even when I worked in transportation, where I was the IT person 20 years ago, I was head of IT, whatever. I just called myself IT person back then because we didn't have CIO, CISO titles 20 years ago like we do now. It wasn't as well defined, but the company I worked for was doing over like $40 million a year in business, and that was back in 2002. Transportation makes a lot of money without a ton of technology, so they often have a lot of technical debt. Yeah, dedicated freight contracts are worth some money. It was my favorite line that Richard Branson said. I know how to become a millionaire in the airline industry. Start with $1 billion. Oh yeah, you had a brokerage in the a freight software dev company. That's cool. Yeah, the freight world is it's really interesting. That's where I was doing software back then. You just wore all the hats. I was the guy that made the servers go, fixed the databases, had several programmers on staff to automate things with the freight databases. I was doing, and you'll be familiar if you worked in the automotive at all, you probably had to deal with some of the EDI things. So much stuff, and I don't know where it is because I haven't been in that market as much. I know there's still a lot of it in use, but man, EDI was always a pain doing all that. But yeah, absolutely. New shirts. They might be. Let's look. Look at this. Look at this. We'll throw this in here for people. Absolutely, we do have new shirts. I was the guy that had to write all the EDI stuff. So I got really good at writing EDI and building automations around it. But that's how, as a company, we were ahead of a lot of our competitors. That's what made us, we were very profitable. So I can't tell here's the thing back then, and I don't know where the status is today because I don't do freight for Ford. If you want to do freight with Ford, you did EDI. And people who handled EDI well, like we did, we got to get contracts because Ford found us easy to work with because we didn't complain about the EDI. We just kept building kludges together to import all the EDI in an automated way and match all the freight. So it was, yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, I got some new shirts in my shirt store. We got a new RAID is not a backup shirt. So that's cool. I like that. I like the tape on it. There we go. So yes, definitely new shirts. I like the verbose one. We have some new verbose stuff. I need to get one of these because I love this simplicity of it. So I'm gonna I got it. We just uploaded all these, by the way. Oh, we got some more colorful stuff too. So RAID is not a backup. This is silly, but makes me laugh. Enterprise Fluid. Why not? So there we go. There's some of the new things that are on there. Oh, I didn't realize we had cups with these on there. I kind of want this now. I didn't even know this was in here. Also, thank you for your YouTube videos. They've helped me get sort of back up to speed on my feet after a series of difficult life situations. Well, I hope your life situations become less difficult and your tech becomes more workable and usable. Thoughts of setting up XCP-NG and RAID versus back it up to TrueNAS. I prefer to run TrueNAS as my storage most of the time, but that's for a lot. I don't know. That's where I run it because I have enough systems to do it. If you don't have enough systems, then the old cups were horrible in a dishwasher. Well, that's not good. I tell you what, email me at Homelab. If you still have those cups, send me a picture of it that it was horrible, and I'll send you a discount code or maybe I don't know. I think I can do some free ones. Email me. I'm curious how bad they were, if I can rectify that situation. I mean, I really don't know the best answer to this. We use a company called Firewall. We switched them a little while ago. They seem to be better than the previous companies, but what's happened in the market behind the scenes is all these companies keep getting bought up by venture capital companies that make them all one garbage company. So as a creator, I don't want to take the time to make every hand done thing myself. It's just too hard. I can never keep up with the volume without making the product cost way more. But I do see that companies like Linus have done some cool scaling. I hope, and maybe there's some way I can work with Linus to start building things and getting better. But it's hard. I don't mind. And I think some of you might pay for a higher quality product, and I would like one, but it's really hard to figure out who it is. Currently, Fourth Wall, every one of my creator friends tells me is the best. And I'm wearing, this shirt's been washed plenty of times. It still looks good. It's held up well. There's a little bit of cracking, I think. If I stretch it, see, a little bit, not bad I bought this, I don't know, months ago. So it's gone through several wash cycles and everything else. But I wouldn't mind a really high quality content store, but I don't know who to use because the people I were using went downhill. But then I tried to find another one, and it took a lot of figuring out to realize they're all one company. They all have different names, but the VC firms buy them all, and it's just annoying. I misread that and was wondering why Cups was running in a dishwasher. That would be weird. Ooh, that's what we need. A Cups cup. I'll make a note of that. I don't know. I don't use Avaya, so I don't know why it stopped working or what errors you have. Check the logs is always the first place to look. A Cups should come with built-in vulnerabilities, like a hole in it. Cups should be disabled by default. Yes. I would more likely buy higher quality stuff, a slightly better price. I have several things from LTT. They're a predictable call. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think LTT is a good job. Linus mentioned it in his interview he did with Colin and Samir that a lot of creators, and he's right, a lot of them don't want to invest, but I have some money and would invest. And at some point I might reach out to Linus, and it would mean limited product. Like there would be less product if I had somewhere like Linus doing it, but I don't mind saying I got to put $10,000 or $15,000 up front to buy a bunch of product that I'll sell. Cause that's when you want to do things high quality. You're not doing the print on demand. You're investing in it. I've never been shy or afraid of putting money into something and working towards a better outcome. Too many people are short-sighted on it. I've never, I joked around at the very beginning of this live stream about how much money I've lost this year, but it's because I'm investing in my company to make it better. That investment had a price, and that price is the losses I had, but it is what it is. Looking at the end of the year and not seeing a profit, but seeing a loss of, I don't have it all officially yet, but roughly $70,000 I lost. I'm like, yeah, that's not good, but that's what it cost me to invest in the projects that I'm working on to get where I want to be. I can lose $70,000 on something and invest because most of it's actually going to come back in the first quarter of this year because those investments are paying off now. That's the biggest thing about any of that. I won't go, unless anyone wants to know about the business stuff. I'll save that for, maybe I'll do a business technicalities talk about it. My other business channel. I don't mind. I'm very transparent about all the business stuff that I do. I think more people should talk about business in a realistic way. I hate the garbage stuff I see on LinkedIn and everything else where it's a bunch of it's funny because I don't know what to call it exactly, like grifters and hustle people, buy my book, my 10 tips to make you a better business person, and are just full of BS. I don't know. I found those people greatly annoy me. I like to just give people really honest, like, this is how I do it. Here's how I work the numbers. Here's why I lost money, but this is the result of how I lost money to how I gained it. And I've done it over the years when I built out things for my Lawrence Systems company. There's times when I made money. There's times when I lost money. That loss was because almost always investments I made to make something bigger happen. Sanctimonious jackoffs. We'll definitely say that. Yes. I'm far enough in that they won't demonetize this because I'm 2.5 hours in. Rumor has it you won't get demonetized by saying weird things later in the video, but I don't know if that's true or not. It's not free. Is it a tax write-off? Yes, but not free. There's still, like, when I make money, I have to pay taxes on the money that comes to me. So write-offs have the advantage of reducing your taxable base, but that's because you're buying an object. Like I bought this out of my business account. This is a Raspberry Pi. So I was able to buy this with pre-tax dollars. This increased my losses, but losses are still losses. I hate to tell you, there's not $74,000 extra laying around. I'm not going to pay taxes on $74,000. As a matter of fact, my other company, CNWR, did very well this year. So I have a bunch of money coming from CNWR that will come to me personally because I personally own several companies, but each company is its own entity. So your tax burden from one company can also be lightened from the tax losses you get from the other. Taxes are complicated. I pay smarter people than me for that are dedicated to solving that. Let's see. Sarcasm. Thank you. Bottom line, up front, paired with honesty and transparency, turns out to be a great way to grow a business. Yeah, I've always been honest and transparent, whether it's this channel, my business channel. Why? I don't know. I think it's a trait some people have to be scammers. I don't know. Like, I don't know how they just don't want to do the hard work. They shortcut their life into being a scammers, and they're just terrible. I don't know what else. I try to avoid those people. Matter of fact, there was a Reddit post about this. Where did it go? Because I have a common reply for this. And oh wow, they deleted it. Wow. The post has been deleted from Reddit. Well, the original, but yeah. Basically, it was complaining about all the influencers that are just BS courses and not really doing the work. But what I do is everyone wants to name and shame people who suck. There's definitely people who suck. Let's, instead of naming and shaming people who suck, why not think about the process by which you can determine if there's someone who sucks? That's a better training option. And I'll throw a link to this if anyone wants to read it. It's just my Lawrence Systems account here. Matter of fact, I think I can do a permalink to this. Hold on. If I click permalink. And I do this, if anyone just wants to read what I wrote here, but I've posted this on my LinkedIn, and my Reddit is very public. It's called Lawrence Systems. Not hard to figure out what Tom's talking about on Reddit or what Tom comments on Reddit. But it's the summary here, and I give details, but how do you recognize a crap influencer who's not really there to help you, but there to extract money out of your pocket? Overemphasis on financial gain as opposed to teaching you something. Lack of depth in their content, lack of substantive content. This is just one of those things. There's people who just gloss over everything and are always giving you the most basic of basic information after they took your money, which, by the way, the reason they're teaching you isn't to teach you. They tell you, do you want to make $1 million in cybersecurity? Buy my course for $99.95. It'll make you $1 million. And that type of person is definitely that. The grifters. Lack of social proof. We live in an era where you can create social proof. You can create lots of YouTube videos and content and actually put the work out there to show that you actually do things. And these people don't. They're grifters. They don't want to take the time. They don't want to put together real work. So they have vague backgrounds. They never tell you. They always did something. My favorite one, and God, these are the worst people that are very infuriating. My job was classified. I can't tell you about it. BS. I've got an interview I did with Kyle Hansevan. He worked for the NSA. You can learn about what Kyle did at the NSA. He talks about his time working there. Obviously, he can't tell you about classified things, but here's a guy that did the work. And so he has no problem talking about the work. Now, there are other people who have worked for the NSA that scrub that from their resume purposely. They don't talk about it. Those are the people that did the secret things. That means, but they also are not the people who brag or try to tell you, well, I worked for a place that was classified and they can't tell you. Those are the grifters right away. When those people, when I meet them, yeah, that it nails it each time for me. All right. End of rant. What is it? There's not a normal delay. There's just a delay. I don't know what's happening with pfSense CE. It's on a very slow release cycle. I don't know what the future of it looks like. We talked about a little bit earlier of the end of open source firewalls, because besides OpenWRT, there's not a lot out there anymore. It's a tough market right now. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the future looks like. For now, pfSense is still a pretty popular system. Will it become just another based on open source like UniFi is? Maybe. I don't know. Oh, yes. Me in my garage next to my Lamborghini. I looked at Harvester. It felt incomplete. It didn't compel me at all. So I don't have any intentions of reviewing it. I don't think the documentation was particularly, maybe it's gotten better. Last I looked, it wasn't very documented. It didn't have any compelling features that made me want to use it over Proxmox or XCP-NG. Have been getting nothing but IP fire ads. Interesting. No, I have individual S corps. I have no LLCs. For me, the structure that my accountant suggested for reasons is S corps. So CNWR and Lawrence Systems are my two primary companies. They're an S corp. Other companies I've invested in, they are also S corps as well. But I only have the role of funding stuff. Requirements for Harvester are also massive. Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen Harvester in the wild. I don't know anyone using it at all. 0 people. It's always something people on the Homelab ask about occasionally. That's as much. I only know about it because folks like you ask about it, and that's where it all stops. Yes. S Corp distributions. S Corps can also own assets like cars, vehicles, and you have to have a payroll. So it's kind of weird. My company can lose money but pay me. I'm part of the reason I had losses. So I can collect a paycheck and then I can declare a loss and get the taxes refunded. That's legal? Sure is. I guess. I don't know. I have an accountant. He magics that all together. Well, it's not magic. It's the way the rules work. It's unfortunate. For better or worse, the game is what it is. It's complicated. Anyone else wearing your Xmas jumper again today? Yeah. Then again, for me, it's not any different, actually. Why not? Let's wander off topic for a moment. Because how I show up to Christmas parties. Wearing my Hail Santa sweater. So if anyone wonders what Tom wore for Christmas, if I have to go to someone's party, I'm going to have my Hail Santa on. So yes, there's that's how we roll for the Christmas party. I feel like I had another, I don't know. Anyways, babbling a bit. My friend Rich did a review on Proxmox Data Center. It's pretty cool. Proxmox is catching up with XCP-NG on features like Data Center Manager. So I get why Proxmox is building it, because the enterprise features of XCP-NG are having that single pane of glass across data centers. And that's something that I think Proxmox is missing. I've talked about it before. So maybe when it's released, I'll talk about it and compare it to how XCP-NG works. But I don't use Proxmox in production, so I don't really have a ton of opinions on it. As of right now, no, but there is some work coming, because Zen supports ARM. And there's a lot coming on XCP-NG and ARM. It's just not available today, but it's one of those things that is in the works. Here, I'll share an article actually from the team at Vates on kind of where things are going with it. So yes, but it's not coming tomorrow, in case you're wondering. Why isn't pfSense not starting a monthly model? They have an annual one. I think $120 a year for pfSense is a reasonable price. People seem to think that's highway robbery. I think this is what's happening in open source firewalls. It takes so much work to develop a firewall that it's not easy for an open source community to build and maintain a firewall. The only successful one really left out there, besides, pfSense, as people note, is really slow on the updates, but OpenWRT is the only other one out there. And I want to play with OpenWRT. Sometimes I think it's cool, but yeah, there's not a lot out there anymore. Have you looked at Kiwi to build images? No, I have not. Vios is targeting enterprises. I mean, I don't think Vios is a bad option, but first, running a firewall from the command line, not something I think the audience here is all going to do. There's exceptions. I know there's someone who's really good at it, and that's, matter of fact, I know some people that only prefer command line firewalls, and I hate that they have web UIs on them. I know a lot of network engineers that loathe any type of web interface for switching. They think that's an awful idea, and our peak switching management is all done from the command line, or sometimes some automation tools like Ansible. There are certainly those people who live in that world and are very happy doing it, but I think that makes it less accessible, because if you devolve that all the way down to programming languages, you think that everything should be built in assembly, because assembly is so much more efficient than frameworks. So should we all go back to assembly, or does that make it less accessible for people to write programs? Wouldn't recompiling XCP be pretty easy for ARM? I don't know. I don't recompile things. I'm going to say not necessarily. 120 may be inexpensive for folks here in the USA, but it's expensive to me in Europe. That's also a huge deal because currency exchanges are real. And the US has, I mean, I'm not going to get too deep into this topic. I've actually talked about it a couple times with people always ask. The diversity in the US is dramatic. I live in a low cost area. So when I pay myself, I don't have to pay myself what my friends have to pay themselves in other areas of the US to have the same lifestyle I have, because housing costs are almost triple, quadruple in somewhere like California in certain areas compared to where I'm at here just outside of Detroit. So it's interesting because it's just wild how much differences there are in costs for cost of living, just even in the US. And that gets exacerbated more in other countries. So yeah, 120 is a lot for some people when the median income is substantially lower than what it is here. I do love the way pfSense has one XML file. That makes life easy. This XML file represents your entire setup for pfSense. It's wonderful. Yeah, that's a different problem when the Canadian doll hairs go down a little bit. I mean, honestly, I have a friend doing this. He gets paid as a contractor here in the US. He's got a lot of contracts that are interesting. He's moving out of the US. He's selling all of his US stuff and moving outside the US because the cost of living is so much cheaper, but his contract pay is the same. So he can keep getting paid as a contractor with the same amount of pay, but dramatically drop his cost of living and live somewhere else. It is interesting. But yeah, with remote work, you can do that. Well, it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't seem much because for US people, of course, it's $10 a month. As was just pointed out earlier, it's going to depend greatly on what the median income is. $10 and 10 US dollars means something very different to me. 10 US dollars is not even me buying lunch. 10 US dollars is more than, I mean, I could probably find something really cheap for lunch, but even in a fast food order, if I order a pizza, it's like $18 now. So $10 a month, not bad. It's less than a pizza a month to have your firewall. But honestly, a lot of people asking here about UniFi, for example. UniFi not having a subscription on a firewall becomes a compelling option because total cost of ownership is I buy a one-time purchase. Let's say the smaller UniFi firewalls that are in that $200 price range. I buy that, and now I use it for the next 5 years. One time $200. The ROI becomes kind of obvious. Even if that's expensive, it's an investment that you get to keep for a long time. This is something I've been telling people a lot of. You're nailing it right here. As security moves to the endpoint, the edge firewall stops being a security device and becomes a more standard router. This is one of the reasons we're able to use pfSense as much as we do, because we focus on security of the endpoint. The firewall is just not where all the security needs to be. Oh yeah. Michigan to California is wildly different. Yeah, ZenArm exists, but that's not the same as recompiling XCP-NG. Broadcom has gone back and forth on this. The reality is Broadcom broke everybody's trust. The moment they broke everybody's trust, it's one of those things like they tried to squeeze everybody. They raised the price. Everyone got mad. And from there, they started realizing people would walk. Broadcom raised prices thinking people wouldn't leave. Once people left, Broadcom said, uh-oh, we're in trouble. So they tried to walk it back. The problem is, do you trust someone who does that? If someone screws you over and forces you into a position and kind of jokingly says, well, we're just going to squeeze you for it, what do? Do you stay with that person? Or if they eroded all trust of their brand to the point where you don't? Broadcom made many backtracks over the year, but it's too late for many people. Exactly. Do you provide support for Proxmox? Limited support. I'm kind of iffy on it. Almost all the time when people contact us with Proxmox, they've really made a mess and they don't want to pay what it costs to fix the mess. Our billable rate's usually too high for home users to have a Proxmox mess sorted out. So it depends on what the support is for. But we don't have any contract support for Proxmox that we offer. We do offer that for XCP-NG, but not for Proxmox. Our last 2 VM clusters are being shut down next month before your service provider contract expires. Yeah. I think the following any tech has is because people really get hung up on not wanting to learn a new thing. I'm all about learning a new thing, but I realized I am not the average person. I used to think other people wanted to learn new things. I am very wrong about that. Honestly, let's extrapolate out of tech. They would talk about human nature for a moment. If you were to come up and ask me, hey, Tom, would you go to a place that serves the food that tastes exactly the same across every location, that has a very generic and bland taste profile? And do you think that would be a successful business? I'd say no way McDonald's would succeed. But here we are. If we are to judge McDonald's as the best burger company because they probably sell more burgers than anybody else, it just turns out people like bland. and that's fine. There's a market for it. It's not my market. So I think it's just kind of like that. People don't like change. So they go, but I've always pressed the buttons in this order, and that order, I don't know what it does, but it makes the ESXi machine go. If I have to learn a new system, the buttons are in a different order and the menu's in a different place. And now I have to learn it. And I don't want to learn it. VMware Workstation was amazing 20 years ago. ESXi was free and people all learned it. Now it's not going to be free. Now people are going to have to get used to it. Yeah. So McDonald's is better outside the US. I like their hash browns. I do stop by and grab a McDonald's hash brown in the morning. Not always, but sometimes. I think they're pretty good. I don't eat a lot of fast food. Where are you seeing businesses move to when leaving VMware? We see a massive, we just did 2 projects, one for about $300,000. The next one was almost $400,000. And they're both migration projects to get people off of VMware and on the XCP-NG. Oh yeah. When it comes to a business, it's not that change is just risk. Change has a cost. I have to train people. Training people is hard because training people is expensive, and expensive is not billable. It means I have to raise the cost of my product and lose in the short term. Like it's this whole balancing act. Okay, we're moving off of VMware, which this entire team of people knows. I need to train them on the next product. That's going to be inefficient and cost us X dollars to train them. Okay, go do it. Well, that's going to reduce the margin we make. Well, how are we going to solve that problem? We're going to raise prices. Is our competitor raising prices too? No. Well, crap. We can't raise it too much or they'll switch to the competitor. And the cycle continues. Oh yeah, there's a ton of the MSP space, the managed service provider space is really confused about Linux stuff. Generally speaking, they don't think so. Yeah, Hyper-V still exists for better or worse for now, but yeah. Budget-friendly firewall options. I'll throw UniFi in the mix there. If you're looking for a budget-friendly firewall, UniFi makes a pretty good product. But I'm sure there's consumer brands out there that maybe people like, but I don't know them. I don't use them. I will. That is on my 2025 video list, is playing with OpenWRT. I think it's a pretty cool alternative from my initial playing with it. I don't know where its gaps are, but I'm going to set it up and figure that out. Are you seeing MSS become more viable for companies as security gets more complicated? Microsoft isn't going away. I assume you're asking about Microsoft. Oh, the elusive high net margins without the competitor's dilemma. Yeah. Has anyone seen government agencies, cities use XCP? Absolutely. I can't share their name here, but it's a major city that I did some consulting with for XCP-NG. Very big. They migrated everything. We've got several that we've consulted with. So yes, absolutely. I mean, I've talked about one of the larger clients we've worked with having over 2,000 virtual machines. Like, we're not talking small scale. I've also mentioned before the companies we're working with. I mean, this is a few $100,000 worth of systems that we're putting in. These are all running XCP-NG. So absolutely, there's some large companies using this. Yeah, Firewall. I've never liked the phone app with it, but people like it. Can someone answer me this? Is Firewall still just managed via the phone app? That was something I thought was just weird. Oh, managed security services. I've never liked the idea that, I don't know. I guess I've not been big on all these breaking companies apart, because people ask me, like, managed service provider, MSP, or are you an MSSP, managed security service provider? I don't like that secondary determination like that, because I think if you're touching the computers, you better understand security, or you probably shouldn't be running a managed service provider. But I don't know. There's a talk that my friend gave at one of the hacker conferences that MSPs suck, but the world without them sucks more. And he's not wrong. So there's no easy answers on how much skill level needs to be had to be in that category of business. There's the mess at the back of that server. Firewall has a very limited web interface. Okay. Many things are done with all those VMs. I can't say what they do because I would reveal the nature of the client that I'm under NDA for. So that one I can't talk about. We work in the automotive space. How's that? So some of the automotive space uses these tools as well. I mean, some of it's, I can generically say engineering tools. Some of the other stuff, one's a phone company. A phone provisioning company. Every client of theirs gets a virtual machine. That's one of the reasons they have a lot of VMs. No, I think the backup appliance is a completely different product. I'll share some thoughts on that later when I got to look through all the stuff. I've actually got one. It's in my lab. I've been playing with it. So I'll share thoughts on that later. How do you ask questions? You could always just type them in the little chat box. I don't know what you're asking. I don't run anything with MQTT. I think it's neat, but no, I don't run it. To have a place like that to work would be heaven. This is just one area of our lab for things, but because we actually have stuff running in data centers. We have eventually I want to cover what's over here in this little corner. We have a big pile of old that we haven't gotten rid of, but it's also kind of cool stuff in there. But you notice there's a whole rack of things next to it. There's so much that I haven't really had time to really dive into, but eventually I'll get to lots of things. I got to finish reviewing these as well. This is the new UniFi Enterprise stuff. I have a Intel Cisco 10 gig NIC that will not work with any of the DACs I've purchased for it. I have not run into that. I've actually found that those, based on my testing, those I'm trying to remember what systems I have that have them in there, but I don't remember being any compatibility issues with them at all. So you may have a different problem because I'm using Ubuntu, not Ubuntu. They say UBNT, so I want to say Ubuntu for some reason, but UniFi, I have UniFi DAC cables plugged into those and they're working fine. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll probably be there at the Wild West Hacking Fest Mile High. There's a chance I'll be there. Unless the tickets are sold out. So I did not buy a ticket yet. What question do you ask a client to help provide what they actually need versus what they think they need? I usually start with something simple. I say, what sucks and how can I make it suck less? I'm honest when I talk to people. And if you start with questions like that, you get to the answer quicker. Just break the ice. If you're looking for a more in-depth discussion, I would probably suggest my forums is where I'll definitely reply with a more detailed answer than I'll have here. I just kind of with the live stream answer questions, which by the way, I am going to wrap up the live stream in a little bit because wow, it's 4 o'clock and I've been going for this long. Oh, questions flew in quick. What is the go-to basic UniFi firewall router these days? You mentioned one that's about $200 range. Probably. I think the Cloud Gateway Max is pretty cool at the $279 price. But they do have these two. This one's got Wi-Fi integrated. This one, I've not had a problem. This is actually what I've installed for some of my kids because I don't want to do support for them. My kids have this at their house and it works. Some people say it's underpowered. It is 149. I don't know what they're expecting, but it works. It routes. It has Wi-Fi. It works like expected for $149. I personally think spending $200 gets you something better, but you do separately with this one have to buy a Wi-Fi device. That may not be what you're looking for. The Ultra's not bad either at $129, because then you can take that extra money and buy one of their Wi-Fi devices. What do they got here? So can we sort by price? Recommended. Lowest price first. Oh, there we go. This still exists. Here's probably the cheapest good one out there is going to be the U6 Plus. Or the U6LR. The U6LRs are nice. You fell asleep, woke up, and I'm still here. That is funny. Oh, yeah. It's all about the marketing materials for sure. It's a cool feature. It makes us tech people happy. Yeah, if you want to try UniFi, I'm excited for this. Is what's got me interested in the OpenWRT. Why I think it's cool is they've released their own router board, and I think this is going to make OpenWRT pretty popular. Like when they have their own official stuff launched, I think this is cool. And I'm hoping this project can really flourish and get some more functionality and become a viable solution for people that's fully open source. I'm excited about that. I want to test it. I haven't played around with it to know enough. Many of you have tried it and tell me I should be trying it too. I will most certainly hit the forums, so I've largely gone away from social media. That's why I have my forums. I host my forums. They are not social media. I mean, they're social and they're on the internet. Does that make them social media? I don't like Facebook. I don't like Twitter. I don't like any of the social media companies. They all have the same trajectory of going to hell and becoming a hellscape of dystopian garbage. I'm not a big social media person. People got mad when I posted that I'm added one, and all I do is throw all my content there for people who follow me, but I don't really spend a ton of time on them, and they're not great. You don't own the platform, you don't own the data, therefore I never built my forums or anything in social media. I thought about it, and I said, I don't want to force people to use Facebook, and I'm so glad I made that decision like 6 years ago, and I've been hosting my own forums ever since. So my forums are free. They don't require a sign up. Everything's public. I'm sorry, they don't require a sign up to view. To post, they do. People get mad about that I require a sign up to post. I'm like, I'm not 4chan. I'm not going to let anyone anonymously post garbage, because they will. So you do have to sign up if you want to post to my forums, but reading my forums is free. Oh, I agree. I don't do a ton of 2.5 gig because it's taken a long time for 2.5 gig to get around there, and 10 gig is in some ways a little bit less expensive for even more performance. Yeah. Did you hear Meta is adding AI bots openly? Oh, it doesn't surprise me. It's so full of garbage. The loss of forums has been a huge loss collectively, but so much knowledge base that was easy to interface and search have all but dried up. They're making a comeback. And I think the death of social media is a good thing, because that's exactly why forums are becoming more popular. I'm here for it. The social media falling into its own eating itself and turning into dead internet theory. Well, dead internet theory started as a joke. Social media is proof it becomes real. So I'm fine. Social media can just go away. We can go back to proper forums where it's forums that are, even if it's dispersed across the web, they're much better in every way. Oh, yeah. A lot of companies won't bother with a website and they just send you to Facebook. You're not wrong. They have to try harder to get people's attention with OpenWRT. Maybe. I currently OpenSense and Proxmox, UniFi gear, LAN on site, switching, etc. I have 2.5 gig WAN LAN. What do you think of migrate OpenSense to a Chinese N100 or UniFi gateway? If you're happy with OpenSense and you know it really well, it has more functionality than UniFi does. But if you don't use any of that functionality, UniFi is fine. But you're moving away from open source and moving away to an ecosystem from a company. But UniFi has been good for a while now and getting better. Level 1 Text has some videos suggesting 25 gig can actually be cheaper and come across than 10 gig for Homelab. I don't know that 25 gig is cheaper, but it's definitely become a whole lot less expensive. But 10 gig has been around 2006 or 7. So there is a ton of SFP 10 gig out there that's really inexpensive. Yeah, registering for my forums is free as well. I don't plan to change that. The good old days of news groups. Yes. Reddit hasn't totally died, but Reddit certainly did some things that to let people know they don't own the platform. That's the reason I didn't build things in Reddit either. Oh yeah, Facebook groups are terrible. They're just garbage. No, 10 gig copper Ethernet UTP, not good. 10 gig DAC, good. That's I definitely would recommend 10 gig DAC. What? Share some advice for passing secrets. Wondering about some strategies for handling keys and stuff. Not my field of expertise, so I'm not exactly sure the question here. Tom's forums are great. Just tech, no BS. Yes, I do delete the BS. Occasionally someone thinks it's a place for them to post their thoughts on randomness that are not tech related. Sorry, it's not. That gets deleted. See, that's where I think forums are good. There are forums for people who would like to knit and sew. If you want to post about knitting and sewing, those are the place for you. And if you decide to post about knitting and sewing in my forums, I will delete it because it is not the topics that we cover. I don't even want an off topic. I think forums are best. The value any forum has, and the reason we're talking about Facebook in such a negative way, the value of any forum is its moderation. That is what value it provides. The technology needed to manage a bunch of text and pictures for people to share and have accounts on is relatively easy to maintain. The value that's provided is the moderation. And the fact that Facebook has announced that they're just letting bots be more prevalent is us being mad at less moderation on the platform, where the moderation gone means it's just a bunch of people arguing or a bunch of bots posting garbage to get us to click on it. So the moderation of a platform is its value. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. Usenet's not gone, but it certainly isn't as popular. I welcome the return of forums, BBS, and IRC. I like IRC. Late greeting from Seattle, or I think it'd be a little bit morning in Seattle. I forget how many hours behind, or noon. Big thanks for your content. Have a great 2025. And thank you very much for a donation. Super awesome. I'm in some groups with absolute fire memes. Okay, social media has got some memes that are fire. I won't argue with that. I don't get any useful. I can't. Okay, is it useful because it entertains me? I like good memes. That's it. Mostly I post memes on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's going downhill fast. Oh, I miss blogs and people who post really good write-ups. Yes. Ooh, knitting with Ethernet cable as a management technique. I'm for this. If you are going to braid an Ethernet cable, yes. Go to serial port and set up a BBS access for the Lawrence Systems forums. There's an idea. I'm going to absolutely tell you a lot of people that also have gray hair like me still use IRC. I'm going to say the young people don't use IRC, but trust me, a lot of OG hackers and stuff that I still talk to, they're still on IRC. Can we get automated knitting and Tom suing with Raspberry Pi? Not likely. Yeah, I have been on for a while, so I'm going to wind it down here. 3.5 hours is enough, though. I am hungry, and I actually should do something productive. And I got a lot of people who messaged me today that I'm going to take the time to reply to and then chill out. But thank you all for joining me for this last 3.5 hours. Good news for those of you that just joined now. I have started building a new workflow that allows me to time index all these again. So that's happening. It's not automated yet. I'll get there. There's actually a use for AI, and it's figuring out what Tom rambled about for 3 hours and then putting timestamps to help people find it. So yes, my older pfSense videos are still relevant. So check those out on my channel. Smash that like button. I like to see that. Thank you. Have a pizza with your son? Yes, I hear him rustling around upstairs, so I got to feed my child as well. I don't know what he wants to eat, but we'll figure that out. But thanks, everyone, for joining. Reach me at the Homelab at lawrencesystems.com. And as I said, I'll be updating some of I've been going backwards through some of the videos, testing the workflow and putting timestamps in, because when I ramble for 3 hours, there's probably some value in there that you don't want to watch for 3 hours to find. And I'm excited. I'm going to play with this today. Thank you again for mentioning CTOP, because I think that looks really cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.